Welcome, and thank you for joining me on this profound exploration into the world of family constellations. Have you ever felt stuck in a pattern, repeating the same struggles in your relationships, career, or personal life without understanding why? Perhaps you've noticed recurring themes of anxiety, sadness, or conflict that seem to have a life of their own, almost as if they were inherited. This course, Family Constellations, Understanding Hidden Dynamics in Relationships, is designed to illuminate these very patterns. We will embark on a journey together to uncover the unseen forces that profoundly shape our lives, often originating from generations past. This is more than just an intellectual exercise. It is an invitation to see your life, your family, and yourself through a new, compassionate, and transformative lens. Over the course of our time together, we will dive deep into the core principles of this powerful method, first developed by the German psychotherapist Bert Hellinger. You will learn about the concept of the family system and how unspoken loyalties, unresolved traumas, and hidden entanglements with our ancestors can manifest in our present-day challenges. We will explore the fundamental orders of love, a set of natural laws that govern the health and well-being of a family system. Understanding these orders can bring incredible clarity to complex family dynamics. We will then move on to identify common systemic entanglements, such as unconsciously carrying the fate of a forgotten relative or being caught in a reversed role with a parent. But this course is not just about identifying problems, it's about finding resolutions. We will explore the healing movements and powerful sentences that can restore balance and flow within the family soul, allowing love to flow freely once more. The goal is to provide you not just with theory, but with practical insights that you can begin to apply to your own life, helping you to map your family system and understand the dynamics at play in your personal relationships, your career, and even your health. By the end of this journey, you will possess a new perspective on your unique place within your family story and be equipped with the awareness to move forward with greater consciousness, freedom, and inner peace. Let's begin this transformative journey together. Welcome back. In our last video, we opened the door to this fascinating journey. Now it's time to lay the first, most crucial cornerstone of our understanding, the concept of the family as a system. When we think about our personal challenges, our anxieties, our patterns in relationships, the common tendency is to look inward, to analyze our own psychology in a vacuum. We might ask, "What's wrong with me?" or "Why do I always do this?" This perspective, while valuable, often misses a much larger, more powerful force at play. Family Constellations invites us to shift our lens from the individual to the collective, to see ourselves not as isolated islands, but as integral parts of a vast, interconnected web we call the family system. Imagine a delicate hanging mobile. If you touch one of the suspended figures, even slightly, the entire structure moves. The other figures don't just jiggle randomly. They shift and turn in a way that seeks to restore the mobile's overall balance. A family operates in a strikingly similar way. The actions, emotions, and even the fate of one member send ripples throughout the entire system, affecting everyone else, whether they are consciously aware of it or not. Therefore, trying to understand an individual without considering their family context is like trying to understand the function of a single gear without looking at the entire machine it belongs to. This systemic perspective radically reframes how we view personal problems and symptoms. Instead of seeing anxiety, depression, or a recurring relationship failure as a personal failing, we begin to see it as a signal, an expression of something happening within the larger family system. The individual carrying the symptom is often unconsciously acting as a messenger for the system itself, pointing to an imbalance or an unresolved issue from a previous generation that needs attention. This is a profound shift away from blame and shame. It doesn't mean we abdicate personal responsibility, but it does mean we recognize that the burdens we carry are often not entirely our own. Bert Hellinger, the founder of this work, observed that the family system possesses what he called a group conscience or a family soul. This is not a mystical or religious concept in the traditional sense, but rather a description of an overarching organizing principle, an energetic field that strives for balance and, most importantly, for completeness. It ensures that no one who belongs is ever truly forgotten or excluded, and it seeks to keep the system in a state of equilibrium. Every system, whether it's a biological ecosystem, a corporation, or a family, has an inherent drive to maintain stability. This principle is known as homeostasis. The family system will do whatever it takes to keep itself in its familiar state, to maintain its established equilibrium, even if that equilibrium is profoundly dysfunctional. Think of a family where expressing anger is considered unacceptable. When a child in that family begins to act out with anger, the system's homeostatic mechanism will kick in. The parents might punish the child, label them as the difficult one, or seek therapy for them, all in an effort to suppress the anger and return the family to its normal state of calm. The symptom, the child's anger, is seen as the problem rather than what it truly is, an expression of a repressed dynamic within the entire family unit. The family is maintaining a stability that is unhealthy, and it resists change because the unknown is often perceived as more threatening than the familiar, however painful that familiar might be. Understanding this powerful pull towards homeostasis is critical for appreciating why we often feel so stuck in certain patterns despite our conscious efforts to change. We are not just fighting our own habits, we are often pushing against the powerful current of our entire family system's need for stability. This energetic field of influence, this family system, is not confined by the walls of our childhood home or by the lives of the people we know personally. It extends backwards in time, encompassing our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, and even earlier ancestors, whose names and stories we may not even know. Their lives, their unresolved traumas, their significant fates, and their untold stories create a powerful legacy that flows down through the generations and continues to exert an influence on us in the here and now. We might find ourselves unconsciously entangled in the fate of a great aunt who died young, or repeating the relational patterns of a grandparent we never met. These are what we call hidden loyalties. We are unconsciously loyal to the system and its unresolved issues, and this loyalty can manifest in our lives as difficulties with health, relationships, or success. By starting to see our family not just as a collection of individuals, but as a living, breathing, systemic field, we open ourselves up to a much deeper understanding of who we are and the forces that have shaped us. This framework is the very ground upon which we will build everything else in this course. It is the key that unlocks the door to a new way of seeing ourselves, our families, and our place in the great human story. I'll see you in the next lecture. Welcome back. In our previous sessions, we explored the foundational concepts of the family system and the mysterious yet powerful knowing field. Now let's turn our attention to two crucial elements that bring a constellation to life: the role of the facilitator and the importance of setting a clear intention. When you first encounter a family constellation, It can be easy to mistakenly view the facilitator as some kind of director, a puppet master pulling the strings of the representatives to create a predetermined outcome. This perception, however, couldn't be further from the truth. The facilitator is not a director, nor are they a therapist in the traditional sense, interpreting information and offering advice based on a psychological theory. Instead, their role is more akin to that of a skilled guide or space holder. Their primary responsibility is to create and maintain a container of safety, respect, and deep presence, an environment where the client and the representatives feel secure enough to allow the system's hidden dynamics to unfold. This requires an immense amount of trust in the process itself, a trust that the system, through the knowing field, has its own inherent wisdom and will reveal precisely what is needed for healing. The facilitator's work is not about making something happen, but rather about allowing what wants to happen to emerge organically. They are a servant to the system, not its master. To effectively hold this space, a facilitator must cultivate several core competencies, the most fundamental of which is a state of deep embodied presence. They must be fully present in the room, not lost in their own thoughts, judgments, or preconceived ideas about what should be happening. This presence is the foundation for another crucial skill: deep listening. This isn't just listening to the words the client speaks when describing their issue. It's listening with the entire body to the nuances of their tone, their posture, and the unspoken emotions that lie beneath the surface. It's also listening to the silence in the room and the subtle shifts in the energy of the group. This kind of listening is inextricably linked to what we call phenomenological observation. This is a very specific way of seeing, a practice of observing what is happening in the constellation, a representative turning their head, another taking a step back, a third looking at the floor, without layering any interpretation or meaning onto it. The facilitator simply witnesses the phenomena, the raw data, as it presents itself through the representatives, trusting that the meaning will emerge from the system itself rather than from their own analytical mind. This ability to observe without interpretation is what allows the facilitator to attune to the knowing field, that collective consciousness we discussed earlier. It is a state of heightened sensitivity and receptivity, where the facilitator's intuition is finely tuned to the subtle, energetic currents moving through the constellation. They are not channeling spirits or receiving psychic messages in a sensational way. Rather, they are sensing the relational dynamics as they manifest physically and emotionally within the representatives. This attunement allows them to sense when a key dynamic is being shown, when an important connection is being made, or when the system is stuck. Based on these perceptions, they might suggest a representative moves, or they might offer a specific sentence to be spoken, not as a command, but as an experiment to see if it resonates and creates a shift in the field. These interventions are minimal and are always offered with a sense of humility and curiosity as a way to test a hypothesis and see how the system responds. The facilitator is a co-explorer with the client, navigating the landscape revealed by the knowing field. Now, let's shift our focus to the other side of this collaborative partnership, the client's intention. If the facilitator's role is to hold the space, the client's role is to provide the focus, and this is done through the formulation of a clear intention. The intention is the North Star of the constellation. It is the specific question or issue that the client brings to the work. It acts as a powerful focusing lens for the energy of the knowing field. directing its vast intelligence towards a particular corner of the client's systemic reality. A vague or scattered intention will often lead to a vague or scattered constellation where the dynamics remain murky and a clear resolution is difficult to find. Conversely, a clear, potent, and heartfelt intention creates a strong energetic pull, drawing forth the relevant information and enabling the possibility of a profound healing movement. Without a clear intention, the constellation lacks purpose and direction, becoming a wander through the systemic landscape rather than a purposeful journey towards a specific destination. So, what makes a powerful intention? It is not a wish, a demand, or an attempt to change someone else. A powerful intention is rooted in personal responsibility and a deep-seated desire for clarity and truth, even if that truth is uncomfortable. An intention like, I want my mother to stop criticizing me, places the responsibility for change outside of oneself and is unlikely to yield a deep resolution. A more powerful reframing of that same issue might be, I want to understand the root of the dynamic between my mother and me, and to find my own strength and peace in her presence. Do you feel the difference? The second intention focuses on the client's own experience, their own capacity to change, and their willingness to see the bigger picture. It is an opening, not a closing, a question, not a demand. It should come from the heart, carrying a genuine emotional weight and a sense of urgency for the client. The best intentions are often short, precise, and address a real-life, persistent issue that the client has been unable to resolve through other means. Formulating such an intention is a process in itself, and often the facilitator will work with the client briefly before the constellation begins to help them hone their initial request into a clear and potent inquiry. The key is to move from the story, the long narrative of what happened, who did what, and who is to blame, to the core existential issue at hand. It might be about feeling stuck in life, repeating a pattern of failed relationships, experiencing unexplained sadness, or struggling with financial success. The intention should encapsulate the essence of that struggle in a way that is open to whatever the system reveals. It requires courage to ask a real question and to be willing to receive the answer, whatever it may be. A good intention is an act of vulnerability, an admission that I don't know the answer and I am open to seeing what wants to be seen. This openness is the very fuel that allows the constellation process to work its quiet magic, bringing light to the hidden loyalties and entanglements that have been shaping our lives from the shadows. Understanding this collaborative dance between facilitator and client is essential for engaging with this work in a conscious and empowered way. I'll see you in the next lesson. Welcome back. It's great to see you again as we continue our exploration of family constellations. Up until now, we've discussed the foundational principles, such as what a family system is, the mysterious nature of the knowing field, and the crucial role of the facilitator. You might be forming a picture in your mind of how this work unfolds, perhaps imagining a group of people standing in a room representing family members for someone. While that image captures the essence of the classic format, it's only one piece of a much larger puzzle. The beauty of family constellation work lies in its adaptability. It's not a rigid, one-size-fits-all methodology, but rather a flexible framework that can be applied in various settings to suit different needs, temperaments, and circumstances. In our journey today, we're going to unpack the different formats in which this transformative work can be experienced, giving you a clearer understanding of the landscape of possibilities available. This exploration is vital because knowing the options allows you to identify which path might feel most resonant and accessible for you should you ever choose to engage with this work on a personal level. Let's begin with the most traditional and perhaps most well-known format, the group workshop. This is the setting that Bert Hellinger, the founder of this work, most commonly used and developed. In a group workshop, a collection of individuals gather, usually for a day or a weekend, with a shared intention for healing and insight. One person, the issue holder, presents a personal concern they wish to explore. The facilitator will then ask them to choose other participants from the group to serve as representatives for key members of their family system, or even for abstract concepts like destiny or success. These representatives are placed in the open space of the room, and what unfolds next is the emergence of the knowing field. The representatives, despite having no prior information about the family, begin to experience physical sensations, emotions, and relational impulses that mirror the hidden dynamics of the issue holder system. This format is incredibly powerful because the collective energy of the group creates a highly charged and supportive container for deep shifts to occur. Watching other people's constellations can be just as profound as doing your own, as we often see our own systemic patterns reflected in the stories of others, leading to what we call resonant healing. The shared human experience in the room fosters a deep sense of connection and reminds us that we're not alone in our struggles. The group workshop provides a unique and dynamic environment, but for many, the idea of sharing deeply personal issues in front of strangers can feel daunting, and that's perfectly understandable. This leads us to the second major format, the one-on-one session. In this intimate setting, it's just you and the facilitator working together in a private space. You might be wondering how a constellation can happen without a group of people to act as representatives. Here, the facilitator employs various tools to stand in for the family members. A very common method is using floor markers. These could be simple sheets of paper, felt mats, or cushions placed on the floor to designate the positions of different systemic elements. The facilitator might ask you to stand on each marker in turn, allowing you to physically step into the perspective and embodied experience of each family member. This process can bring forth astonishingly clear insights as you directly feel the relational dynamics from multiple viewpoints. The one-on-one format offers a high degree of focus, safety, and privacy, allowing the work to proceed at a pace that is tailored entirely to your individual needs and comfort level. The full attention of the facilitator is dedicated to your process, which can make it a very concentrated and efficient way to explore a specific issue without the potential distractions or emotional currents of a larger group. Continuing with the one-on-one format, facilitators have developed creative alternatives to floor markers that can be just as effective. Another popular technique involves using small objects or figurines, often on a tabletop. You might be presented with a collection of simple wooden figures, stones, or other symbolic items and asked to choose one to represent yourself, your mother, your father, a sibling, and any other relevant figures. You then arrange these figurines on the table to create a three-dimensional map of your family system as you perceive it. The spatial arrangement of the figurines, who is looking at whom, who is close, who is distant, who is large or small, reveals an incredible amount of information about the underlying dynamics. The facilitator can then guide you to explore this sculpture of your system, asking questions and suggesting small movements of the figurines to observe the impact on the overall picture. This method provides a certain psychological distance that some people find very helpful, as it allows you to observe your system from an external perspective, almost like a compassionate observer, which can make it easier to see patterns without becoming completely overwhelmed by the emotions they carry. Both floor markers and figurines are powerful tools for making the invisible visible in a private, contained, and personalized manner. In our increasingly interconnected digital world, it was only a matter of time before family constellations adapted to the virtual space, giving rise to the format of online constellations. This modern adaptation has made the work accessible to a global audience, removing geographical barriers and allowing people to participate from the comfort of their own homes. Online constellations can be conducted either in groups or on a one-on-one basis, utilizing video conferencing platforms. In a group setting, participants can still be chosen as representatives. Their video feeds on the screen act as their positions in the constellation space. The facilitator guides the process, and representatives share the physical sensations and feelings that arise for them just as they would in an in-person workshop. For one-on-one sessions online, a facilitator might use specialized software with a virtual constellation board where you can place digital icons, or they might guide you to use objects you have in your own home as representatives. While some may initially be skeptical about whether the knowing field can manifest through a screen, experience has shown that it absolutely can. Energy and information are not bound by physical proximity, and facilitators and participants alike regularly report experiences of the same depth and intensity as those in face-to-face sessions. Finally, we arrive at the most personal and inwardly focused format of all, the inner constellation or self-constellation. This is a practice you can do entirely on your own without a facilitator or any external tools. Though having some experience with facilitated constellations first is highly recommended to understand the principles. This method is essentially a form of active meditation or guided visualization. You begin by finding a quiet space, closing your eyes, and tuning into your body. You then bring to mind the family system you wish to explore and internally place representatives for your family members in your mind's eye. You visualize them standing in a space around you, and you simply observe what you see and, more importantly, what you feel. Where are they standing? Who feels close and who feels far away? What emotions or physical sensations arise in your own body as you hold this inner image? This practice is a powerful way to check in with your inner systemic landscape, gain quick insights into a current issue, or continue the integration process after a formal constellation session. It empowers you to become your own inner facilitator, fostering a deep connection with your intuitive wisdom and your capacity to sense the hidden dynamics at play within you. It is a subtle yet profound tool for ongoing personal growth and awareness. As you can see, the world of family constellations is rich and varied, offering multiple doorways through which to access systemic wisdom, from the communal power of a group workshop to the focused intimacy of a one-on-one session, and from the global reach of online platforms to the deep introspection of an inner constellation. There is a format to suit almost anyone. No single method is inherently better than another. The most effective approach is the one that aligns with your personal preferences, your current needs, and what you feel ready for. Understanding these options demystifies the process and makes it more approachable, allowing you to make a conscious and informed choice about how you might engage with this work. The goal is always the same: to bring light to hidden entanglements, to restore the flow of love, and to find your rightful place within your system so you can move forward in your life with greater freedom and strength. I look forward to our next session together. Welcome back. It's wonderful to have you with me again as we continue our exploration into the profound world of family constellations. We are now moving into the very heart of the systemic principles discovered by Bert Hellinger, a set of fundamental natural laws he termed the orders of love. These are not moral commandments or rigid rules to be followed, but rather observations of the underlying forces that govern human relationship systems, much like gravity governs the physical world. Understanding these orders is like being given a map to a previously invisible landscape. It allows us to see why certain dynamics repeat, why love sometimes fails to flow, and where the sources of many of our deepest, most inexplicable struggles might originate. These orders are the bedrock upon which systemic health is built, and when they are violated, the system itself will seek to restore balance, often in ways that cause suffering for its members. In this lesson, we will begin our deep dive with the most primary, most fundamental of all the orders, the one upon which everything else rests. The first and most foundational of these orders is the principle of belonging. This is an incredibly simple yet profoundly powerful concept. It states that every single member of a family system has an equal and inalienable right to belong to that system. This right is not earned, it cannot be revoked, and it is not conditional upon behavior, success, or social acceptance. Simply by being born or conceived into a family, an individual secures their place for all time. This need for belonging is one of the most primal human drives, possibly even more fundamental than the need for survival itself, because for our earliest ancestors, exclusion from the tribe meant certain death. Our subconscious mind carries this ancient programming, and our loyalty to our family group is therefore ferocious and absolute, operating far below the level of our conscious awareness. It is a deep cellular knowledge that our very identity and existence are tied to this group. When we speak of a member of the family system, the definition is broader than what you might initially think or what you would see on a typical family tree. Of course, it includes you, your siblings, your parents, your grandparents, and so on, going back through the generations of direct ancestors. However, the systemic field also includes others whose fates are intrinsically linked to the family's destiny. This includes stillborn children, those who died in infancy or early childhood, and any miscarried or aborted babies. It also includes the former significant partners of your parents or grandparents, especially if their parting was traumatic or unjust, or if they needed to be cleared to make way for the new relationship. Furthermore, anyone who significantly benefited the family or anyone whose loss or misfortune led to the family's gain also holds a place. Finally, and this is crucial, it includes victims of any harm perpetrated by a family member as well as perpetrators of harm within the family. Their fates are now entangled with the system's conscience, and they too belong. The violation of this first order occurs when a member of the system is excluded. Exclusion can take many forms, both overt and subtle. It can be a conscious, deliberate act of ostracizing a family member who has brought shame or difficulty to the family, the proverbial black sheep who is never spoken of again. It can also be an unconscious process born out of pain and trauma that is too difficult to face. A child who dies very young, for instance, might be forgotten in the daily life of the family because the grief is simply too overwhelming for the parents to carry consciously. Secret adoptions, children given away, or a great uncle who was institutionalized for mental illness and erased from the family story are other classic examples. Sometimes the exclusion is less about a person and more about their fate. A grandfather who took his own life might be remembered, but the truth of his death is hidden, thereby excluding the full reality of his tragic fate from the family's awareness. When such an exclusion happens, a fascinating and powerful mechanism is set into motion. The system itself, through what Hellinger called a group conscience or family soul, registers this imbalance. It knows a piece is missing. This systemic conscience has a blind, archaic drive to be whole and complete. It cannot tolerate missing parts. Therefore, it will seek to bring the excluded member back into the system's awareness. The way it does this is the source of so many of our deep, seemingly personal struggles. The system will conscript a member of a later generation, often a child or grandchild, to unconsciously represent the excluded individual. This later member, out of a deep, blind, and innocent love for their family system, will take on the feelings, behaviors, or even the fate of the one who was cast out. This is not a conscious choice. It is an unconscious identification, a form of systemic loyalty. Let's imagine a concrete example to make this clearer. Suppose in a family, a grandmother had a first love before she met her husband, the grandfather. Let's say this first love was killed in a war. The grandmother, in her deep grief and trauma, never fully mourned him, and upon marrying the grandfather, never spoke of this first love again. He was effectively excluded from the family story, his place not honored. The love between the grandmother and grandfather might have been compromised by this unresolved grief, creating a subtle dissonance. Now fast forward 2 generations to their granddaughter. This granddaughter might find herself inexplicably drawn to emotionally unavailable men, or she might experience a profound, lingering sadness that doesn't seem to have a root in her own life experiences. In a constellation, it might become clear that she is unconsciously identified with her grandmother's lost first love, carrying his fate of being left behind and forgotten, or carrying the grandmother's unexpressed grief for him. This unconscious identification is what we call a systemic entanglement. The person entangled is not living their own full life or feeling their own authentic feelings. Instead, they are carrying a burden that belongs to a previous generation. This can manifest in a multitude of ways. It can look like chronic low-grade depression or anxiety that has no clear biographical cause. It can appear as a recurring pattern of failure in relationships or careers, as if an invisible force is holding them back from happiness and success. Sometimes it can even manifest as physical illness or a propensity for accidents, as the person unconsciously follows the difficult fate of the excluded ancestor. The entangled person is essentially saying on a soul level, I will carry this for you, or I will remember you by being like you, all in a misguided attempt to restore balance and wholeness to the system they love so dearly. Consider the case of a black sheep ancestor, perhaps a great uncle who was imprisoned for a crime. The family, out of shame, might have cut him out of all photos and never mentioned his name to the subsequent generations. He was excluded. A few generations later, a young man in the family might find himself constantly getting into trouble with the law, engaging in self-sabotaging and rebellious behavior, seemingly for no reason. He is a good person at heart, but he can't seem to stay out of trouble. From a systemic perspective, he might be unconsciously connected to this great uncle. His rebellious behavior is not just his own, it is a systemic echo, a way of shouting, "You forgot someone, he belongs too." By acting out, he ensures that the theme of trouble with the law remains present in the family, preventing the excluded ancestor from being truly forgotten. The healing movement for violations of this first order begins with a simple yet profound act, seeing and acknowledging what is. The first step toward resolution is to identify who has been forgotten, excluded, or shamed. This involves looking into our family history with open and courageous eyes, asking questions about the secrets, the sorrows, and the people who are not spoken of. Once the excluded person is brought back into the light of awareness, the next step is to give them their rightful place. This is not about condoning harmful actions or rehabilitating a reputation. Instead, It is a simple, non-judgmental acknowledgement of their existence and their membership in the system. It is about honoring their fate, whatever it may have been, and recognizing that they are a part of the whole, just like everyone else. In a constellation workshop, this is often done physically by having a representative for the excluded person brought into the constellation and placed within the family group. A powerful healing sentence might be spoken by a current family member to the representative of the excluded one. Something to the effect of, "We see you now. You have a place in our family. We honor your fate." For the person who has been unconsciously entangled, the key is to see the connection and then consciously differentiate themselves from the ancestor. They can say with respect, "You are you and I am I. I honor your difficult fate and I leave it with you. With your blessing, I will now live my own life." This act of separating the fates allows the entangled person to release the burden they have been carrying, freeing them to step into their own destiny. Recognizing the fundamental right to belong allows love to flow again. When everyone has their place, the system can relax. The unconscious pressure on later generations to remember the lost ones is lifted. For the granddaughter in our earlier example, seeing the story of her grandmother's lost love would allow her to give his memory a place of honor. She could then release the sadness that was never hers to carry and become free to find a partner whom she can love fully without the shadow of the past. For the young man entangled with the black sheep great uncle, acknowledging this ancestor's place and fate allows him to hand back the responsibility for that rebellion. He can then find more constructive ways to live his own life, free from the unconscious compulsion to repeat a painful past. The energy that was bound up in the entanglement is now liberated for life, for connection, and for personal growth. This first order, the right to belong, is the gatekeeper. Without its fulfillment, the other orders of love cannot function properly, and the system remains in a state of stress and imbalance. It is the deep recognition that the family system is a whole, and every single part, regardless of its perceived worth or difficult story, is essential for that wholeness. By learning to look with eyes that include everyone, we begin the powerful work of restoring order and allowing love to find its natural path, bringing peace not only to ourselves, but to the entire family system, past, present, and future. We will continue to build upon this foundation in our next session. Welcome back. It's good to see you again as we continue our exploration into the profound principles governing our family systems. In our last session, we delved into the fundamental human need for belonging, the first order of love, which anchors us within our family system. Now, we turn our attention to the second of these foundational principles, a concept that governs the flow and equilibrium within our relationships, the intricate dance of giving and taking. This principle of systemic balance operates differently depending on the nature of the relationship, and understanding its nuances is crucial for fostering healthy, sustainable connections. Think of it not as a rigid rule, but as a natural law of relational physics, much like gravity. You don't have to believe in gravity for it to affect you. You simply experience its effects. Similarly, the balance of giving and taking is constantly at play in your life, whether you are conscious of it or not. By bringing awareness to this dynamic, you gain the power to diagnose imbalances and make conscious choices that restore harmony rather than perpetuate distress. It's a mechanism that, once understood, reveals the hidden currents that either nourish or starve our most important bonds. We'll examine how this operates in partnerships between equals and then contrast that with the very different dynamic that must exist in hierarchical relationships like those between parents and children. Let's first consider relationships between equals, such as romantic partners, close friends, or even business colleagues. In these peer relationships, the system craves equilibrium. A healthy connection is sustained by a continuous reciprocal exchange. It's not about keeping a meticulous scorecard, tallying every single favor given and received, but about a general sense of mutual flow. When you give something positive to your partner, a compliment, a gift, a gesture of support, it creates a subtle pressure, a healthy tension for them to reciprocate. To restore the balance, they will likely want to give something back to you, and ideally, they give back just a little bit more than what they received. This little bit more is the engine of growth in a relationship. It's what keeps the positive exchange escalating, deepening the bond of love and connection over time. For example, you might surprise your partner by cooking their favorite meal after they've had a long day. In response, a few days later, they might not just thank you, but also arrange a weekend getaway you've been wanting. This escalation of positive giving strengthens the relationship and builds a reservoir of goodwill. The system remains in a state of dynamic, positive imbalance, always moving towards a deeper connection. Conversely, the same principle applies to negative exchanges, but with a destructive outcome. When one partner inflicts a hurt, whether intentionally or not, it disrupts the balance in a negative direction. The person who has been hurt feels a systemic need to restore equilibrium. The most common and often unconscious impulse is to retaliate, to give back a hurt in return. However, the natural tendency is to give back just a little bit more pain than what was received, to ensure the other person truly understands the depth of the hurt. You can see how this quickly leads to a dangerous, escalating spiral of negativity. She says something that hurts his feelings, so he withdraws and gives her the silent treatment for a day, which hurts her even more. In response, she might make a cutting remark in front of friends, escalating the conflict further. This cycle of escalating retaliation can poison a relationship, eroding trust and love until the connection itself is threatened. The only way to break this destructive cycle is for one person to consciously choose to give back a little less hurt than they received, or better yet, to respond with a positive gesture instead. This conscious act of de-escalation is a powerful move towards healing and is essential for the long-term survival of the partnership. The system becomes seriously strained when this exchange is chronically one-sided. Imagine a relationship where one person is constantly the giver and the other is primarily the receiver. The giver might start with the best of intentions, showering their partner with affection, support, and resources. However, if the receiver is unable or unwilling to reciprocate, a significant imbalance is created. Over time, the giver may begin to feel depleted, unappreciated, and resentful, as if they are pouring their life force into a bottomless vessel. The receiver, on the other hand, can start to feel a heavy sense of obligation and debt. This debt can become so large that it feels impossible to repay, leading to feelings of guilt, inadequacy, or even a desire to escape the relationship altogether, to be free of the burden. It's a paradox. The person who has received so much may be the one who leaves because the weight of the imbalance has become too much to bear. This is a common pattern in relationships that end, where one partner laments, "But I gave them everything." The systemic truth is that everything was too much. It broke the balance and ultimately the bond itself. A healthy partnership requires both individuals to be able to both give and receive, maintaining that delicate flowing equilibrium. Now, let's pivot and examine a completely different relational context, the one between parents and children. Here, the law of balance operates in an entirely different manner. This is a hierarchical relationship, not one of equals. Parents give and children receive. This is the natural, healthy, and necessary order of things. Parents give the ultimate gift, life itself, and they continue to give nourishment, shelter, care, love, and support throughout a child's upbringing. This flow is fundamentally unidirectional, moving from the older generation down to the younger. A child simply cannot repay the parents for the gift of life. It is an offering of such magnitude that no act of reciprocation would ever be sufficient. To even attempt to pay back one's parents for this gift would be to place oneself in an untenable position of permanent, unresolvable debt. The system does not ask for or require this kind of direct balancing. The flow of life and love is meant to move downwards through the generations. The parents stand behind the child, providing a foundation of love and support from which the child can turn and face their own life. The way a child honors this immense gift and creates a larger transgenerational balance is not by trying to give back to the parents, but by taking what they have received fully and with gratitude. They honor their parents by living their own life to the fullest, by embracing their own destiny, and by becoming a successful, thriving adult. The true repayment in a systemic sense happens when the child, now an adult, passes the gift of life and love forward to the next generation, should they choose to have children of their own. If they don't have children, they can pass this life energy forward in other ways, through their work in the world, through creative expression, through mentoring others, or through contributing to their community. In this way, the flow continues. The river of life that flowed from the grandparents to the parents and from the parents to the child now flows from the child onwards into the future. This is the grand balance of the generations. The child bows metaphorically to the parents, acknowledges the gift, and then turns to face their own future, carrying that gift forward. This is the healthy order, the one that allows life to flourish. Disruption and immense systemic difficulty arise when this fundamental order is reversed. This happens when a child, for whatever reason, feels compelled to take on a caregiving role for their own parent. This phenomenon is often called parentification, and it represents a profound violation of the second order of love. The child essentially tries to give back to the parent, attempting to parent them. They might take on emotional responsibility for a parent's happiness, become a confidant for their parents' marital problems, or even take on practical responsibilities for running the household far beyond what is appropriate for their age. The child, in effect, turns around to face the parent, trying to prop them up, rather than taking the parent's support from behind and facing their own life. This reversal of the natural flow places an unbearable burden on the child. They are trying to give something they do not have, the parental authority and life experience, to someone from whom they are meant to receive. It is like trying to pour water from a small cup into a large river to make it flow uphill. It is an impossible and exhausting task. The consequences of this reversal are severe, both for the child and for the entire family system. The parentified child is robbed of their childhood. They are forced to grow up too quickly, taking on adult worries and responsibilities, while their own developmental needs go unmet. They often become overly responsible, serious, and may have difficulty playing or simply being a child. As adults, they may struggle with forming healthy peer relationships, as their primary relational model is one of taking on excessive responsibility for others. They might find themselves drawn to needy partners, recreating the dynamic they had with their parent. They can also feel a deep, often unconscious, anger and resentment towards the parent who, in their neediness, took from them instead of giving. It can feel like a profound betrayal of the natural order. They carry a sense of heaviness and premature aging, a feeling that they have been carrying a load that was never theirs to carry. This systemic entanglement can affect their success in career, their health, and their overall ability to feel joy and lightness in their own lives. From the parent's perspective, while they may receive some short-term comfort or support from the child, the long-term effect is also damaging. By taking from their child in this way, the parent diminishes their own status and authority within the system. They are, in a sense, making themselves small and their child big. This weakens their ability to be an effective parent and creates a dysfunctional dependency that prevents them from resolving their own issues with their own peers or from drawing strength from their own parents and ancestors. The parent is essentially blocking the flow of love from their own lineage and siphoning it from their offspring, disrupting the entire multi-generational system. For healing to occur, this order must be restored. The parent needs to take back their rightful place as the parent, the big one, and the child needs to be freed to return to their rightful place as the child, the small one, who's allowed to simply receive. The resolution in a family constellation setting often involves movements and sentences that make this restored order explicit. A representative for the child might physically turn away from the parent and towards their own future, while the parent's representative places a hand on their back, symbolizing support. The child might say a healing sentence such as, "You are the big one, and I am the small one. I received my life from you, and that is enough. I will do something good with it." This simple acknowledgement releases the child from the inappropriate burden. It allows them to honor the parent for the gift of life without trying to fix or save them. It frees the parent to deal with their own fate and draw strength from their own sources. This restoration of the correct flow of giving and taking is one of the most powerful and profound healing movements we see in constellation work. It allows love to flow correctly again, not as a debt to be repaid, but as a gift to be carried forward, ensuring the health and vitality of the generations to come. I will see you in the next lecture. Welcome back. Today, we delve into another fundamental principle that governs the flow of love and energy within our family systems. We are going to explore what Bert Hellinger called the third order of love, which is all about precedence and the simple, unchangeable reality of time. This order states that those who came into a system first have precedence over those who came later. It's a principle that isn't about value, importance, or being better in any way. Rather, it's a profound acknowledgement of the chronological reality of existence. Think of it like building a house. The foundation must be laid first, and its integrity and position must be respected for the walls and roof to stand strong. Similarly, in a family system, the place of those who came before us must be seen and honored for the system to find its natural stability and peace. This order helps us understand seniority not as a marker of authority in the conventional sense, but as a recognition of place and the flow of life's stream. Parents come before children, the firstborn comes before the second, and a first partner comes before a second one. When this natural sequence is respected, a certain calm descends upon the system, allowing love to flow freely from the earlier members to the later ones, just as a river flows from its source downstream. Let's consider the most fundamental relationship where this order applies, the one between parents and children. Parents, by the very nature of biology and time, come first. They are the source of life for their children. They are, in the systemic sense, the big ones, and the children are the small ones. When this order is respected, the children can stand in their rightful place, which is to receive. They can receive life, love, and support from their parents without feeling an unconscious pressure to give back on the same level, which is an impossible task. However, sometimes this order gets inverted. A child might feel, for reasons we will explore later in the course, that they need to take care of a parent, becoming the big one in the dynamic. This is a heavy burden for a child to carry as it goes against the natural flow of life. By acknowledging that parents came first and are the givers of life, a child is freed from this entanglement. This doesn't mean parents are perfect. It simply means accepting the reality of their position in time, allowing the child to be a child, and to eventually turn their attention towards their own life and future, carrying the gift of life forward. The order of precedence is also critically important among siblings. The first child born holds a unique place, followed by the second, the third, and so on. Each sibling has their own specific position in the chronological lineup, and this position comes with a certain energetic footprint. When this order is honored, each sibling can stand in their own power and take on the responsibilities appropriate to their place. Problems arise when, for instance, a younger sibling tries to usurp the position of an older one, perhaps by being more responsible, more successful, or by taking on a parental role towards the older sibling. This can create a deep sense of unease and rivalry within the sibling group. The younger sibling might feel perpetually exhausted, carrying a weight that isn't theirs, while the older sibling might feel disempowered, unseen, or resentful. Honoring the order means the younger sibling acknowledges the older one's place, saying systemically, "You came first and I came after." This simple acknowledgement can release the tension, allowing each sibling to find their strength in their own rightful spot, fostering mutual respect instead of unconscious competition. It respects the unique journey of each soul within the family. This principle extends with significant impact into the realm of romantic partnerships, especially when we talk about serial relationships. Imagine a man who was previously married and is now in a second marriage. The third order of love dictates that the first wife has a place of precedence. She came first. This doesn't mean she is more important or that the love with her was better, but her role as the first partner in that system needs to be acknowledged and respected by both the man and his new partner. If the second wife attempts to erase the first wife, pretending she never existed or diminishing her significance, it creates a profound disturbance. The new relationship often becomes burdened by the unresolved energy of the first one. The man might unconsciously carry guilt or loyalty towards his first partner, preventing him from being fully present with his second. The children from the first marriage will certainly feel the disregard for their mother, creating a rift. For the second relationship to thrive, the man must first honor what he shared with his first partner, and the second wife must acknowledge that she came after, respecting the history that preceded her. Honoring the first partner is not an act of submission or a declaration that the current relationship is secondary. It is an act of seeing reality as it is. It is a powerful healing movement. When the second partner can look in a systemic sense towards the first partner and say, "I see your place. I respect what you and he shared. You came first, and I have come after. I will make a good place for what he received from you." Something profound shifts. This acknowledgement creates space. It allows the man to fully let go of the past relationship without guilt because its place has been honored. It allows him to be fully available to his new partner and to the new system they are creating together. The children from the first marriage can feel respected in their loyalty to their mother, and the children of the new partnership are not burdened by the unresolved issues of the past. It's about making peace with the past so that the present can flourish, ensuring that love in the new system has a solid and respectful foundation upon which to build its future. Failure to respect this order of precedence is a common source of entanglement and suffering in families. A child who feels they are a better parent to their own parent than their grandparent ever was is inverting the order. They are placing themselves above their own parent and grandparent, judging them from a position of arrogance. This creates a drain on their own life force as they are trying to fix the past instead of living their own life. Similarly, when a company is founded, the founders have precedence. New employees who join later and disrespect the contribution of the early pioneers often find a culture of instability because the roots of the organization have not been honored. In all these scenarios, the key is acknowledgement. It's about looking at the line of time and simply saying yes to the way things are. It's about accepting that you stand on the shoulders of those who came before you, whether they are ancestors, previous partners, or company founders. This acceptance is not passive. It is an active and powerful stance that aligns you with the natural flow of life and brings a sense of rightness and peace. So, how does this manifest in a practical sense? Honoring precedents means you don't try to carry the fate or responsibilities of those who came before you. As a child, you accept your parents as they are, recognizing they gave you the ultimate gift, life, and that is enough. You honor their journey, whatever it was, without judgment. As a second partner, you make a space in your heart for the reality of the first partner, acknowledging the gifts and lessons your partner received from that relationship, which have ultimately contributed to the person you now love. You respect that any children from that first relationship have a primary loyalty to their other parent. This doesn't take anything away from you. On the contrary, it frees you. It frees you to stand firmly in your own place, to carry only what is yours to carry, and to receive the flow of love and strength that comes to you when the order is correct. It is in this place of right ordering that we find our dignity, our strength, and our freedom to move forward into our own destiny. We will explore this further as we move on. Hello again, and welcome back. So far on our journey, we have navigated the foundational principles of family constellations, exploring the profound influence of the family system, the mysterious wisdom of the knowing field, and most recently, the three fundamental laws that govern the health of our relational systems, the orders of love. We have dissected the universal need for belonging, the delicate dance of giving and receiving in systemic balance, and the importance of respecting the flow of time through the order of precedence. Knowledge is a powerful tool, but its true value is unlocked only when it ceases to be an abstract concept in your mind and becomes a living, breathing part of your everyday existence. It's one thing to understand intellectually that every member of your family has an equal right to belong. It's quite another to feel that truth in your bones and let it guide your words and actions. The real transformation, the kind that ripples out and changes not just your inner world, but your relationships, begins when you start to integrate these principles, applying them consciously and consistently to the fabric of your daily life. This is where the theory we've been building meets the road of your personal experience, and it is here that the most profound shifts can start to occur. Let's begin with the first order of love, the deep, primal need for belonging. You might be thinking, how can I, a single individual, influence who belongs in a system that spans generations? The power lies in the simple yet profound act of conscious remembrance and acknowledgement. A system feels whole when all its members are seen and have their place. Consider those family members who have been forgotten, excluded, or spoken of only in whispers. The black sheep, the one who brought shame, the stillborn child, the ancestor who emigrated and was never heard from again. Integrating this order means bringing them back into the light of family consciousness. You can do this in quiet, personal ways. Perhaps you create a small ritual of lighting a candle for a forgotten great uncle. Maybe you make a conscious effort to speak respectfully of a difficult parent or grandparent, acknowledging their place and their fate without needing to condone their actions. You might say internally or even out loud in a private moment, "You are a part of our family and you have your place." This isn't about rewriting history or absolving anyone of their choices. It's about restoring integrity to the system by acknowledging what is, what was. It's about looking at your family photo album, not just at the smiling faces, but also noticing the gaps, the missing people, and giving them an honorable place in your heart. This act of inclusion, of making space, sends a powerful message of healing through the systemic field, and you may notice a subtle but palpable sense of relief, of more energy becoming available to you simply because the system is a little more complete than it was before. The practice of honoring belonging extends beyond just remembering the dead or the excluded. It deeply impacts how we interact with the living. Think about your current family dynamics. Is there a member who is consistently scapegoated, gossiped about, or judged? Every time you participate in or passively listen to this exclusion, you are unconsciously reinforcing a systemic imbalance. To integrate the order of belonging, you can start by changing your own behavior in these situations. This doesn't require grand confrontation. It can be as simple as changing the subject when a critical gossip session starts, or offering a neutral, acknowledging statement like, "He has had a difficult life," or "She is also a part of this family." You are holding a space for that person's right to belong, right there in the moment. It is also incredibly powerful to look at the difficult people in your life, the ones you may wish were not part of your family, and internally acknowledge their place. You might say in your heart, "Even though your choices have caused great pain, you are my brother and you belong to our family system. I leave your fate with you." This internal movement creates a crucial separation between the person's actions and their fundamental right to belong, allowing you to find a more neutral, respectful stance, which paradoxically gives you more freedom and peace than holding on to judgment ever could. Now, let's turn our attention to the second order, the principle of systemic balance, which governs the exchange of giving and taking in relationships. This is perhaps one of the most immediately practical orders you can begin to work with, especially in your partnership, but also in friendships and other peer relationships. A healthy relationship thrives on a dynamic equilibrium where both giving and receiving flow freely. An imbalance occurs when one person consistently gives more than they receive, or vice versa. The giver may feel depleted and resentful, while the receiver can feel burdened by an unrepayable debt. To begin integrating this order, start by simply observing. For the next week, bring a gentle, non-judgmental awareness to your primary relationship. Notice the flow of giving and taking. Who initiates gestures of kindness? Who offers support? Who plans the weekend? Who listens when the other is struggling? Who says thank you? And how is it received? Are you a chronic overgiver, always trying to fix, help, and provide, perhaps out of a hidden need to feel worthy or in control? Or do you find it difficult to receive, deflecting compliments, minimizing gifts, or feeling uncomfortable when someone does something nice for you? This initial observation is not about keeping a scorecard. It's about gathering data on your habitual patterns without judging them as good or bad. Once you have a clearer picture of the patterns of giving and receiving in your relationship, you can begin to make small conscious adjustments. If you've noticed you are an overgiver, practice pulling back slightly. This can feel incredibly uncomfortable at first. It might trigger fears that your partner will be upset or that you will no longer be needed. The key is to allow your partner the space and dignity to give back to you. When they offer you a cup of tea, don't just say a quick thanks. Pause, make eye contact, and really take it in. Let yourself feel the warmth of the gesture and express a genuine, heartfelt thank you. I really appreciate this. Conversely, if you identified as someone who struggles to receive, practice accepting gifts, compliments, and help with simple grace, when your partner praises you, resist the urge to say, "Oh, it was nothing." Instead, try a simple, "Thank you, that's kind of you to say." By consciously practicing receiving, you give your partner the gift of being able to give, which restores balance and allows love to flow more freely between you. True intimacy is not built on one person being the strong one and the other being the needy one. It's built on a mutual exchange where both partners can be strong and vulnerable, both giver and receiver. This mindful practice of cultivating balance through small, everyday interactions can slowly unwind years of imbalanced relating, fostering a deeper sense of equality and mutual respect. Finally, let's explore the practical integration of the third order, the order of precedence, which states that those who came first in a system take precedence over those who come later. This principle is fundamental to finding your rightful place and is often the key to unlocking feelings of strength, purpose, and inner peace. One of the most common and disruptive violations of this order is when a child, out of a deep and misplaced love, attempts to take care of a parent, becoming the big one while the parent becomes the small one. This is the dynamic of parentification we will explore later, but for now, let's focus on how to restore the correct order. The primary tool here is the healing sentence, a simple statement that speaks a deep systemic truth. These are not affirmations you repeat mindlessly. They are powerful acknowledgments of reality that you feel in your body. A cornerstone sentence to restore order with your parents is, "You are the big ones, and I am the small one." You can say this internally while picturing your parents standing before you. Feel the truth of it. They gave you life. They came first. You receive life from them. Saying this sentence and truly meaning it can feel like setting down a tremendously heavy weight you didn't even realize you were carrying. The act of taking your place as the small one in relation to your parents is an act of profound humility and respect. It does not mean you are less intelligent, capable, or worthy. It is an acknowledgement of the flow of life itself. When you stand in your rightful place as the child, you are free to receive the love, support, and life force that flows from your parents and, through them, from all the ancestors who came before. When you try to be the big one, perhaps by trying to solve their marital problems, manage their finances, or heal their emotional wounds, you cut yourself off from this flow. You are essentially turning your back on the source to try to feed the source, which is an impossible and exhausting task. Practice this acknowledgement. When you find yourself worrying about your parents or feeling responsible for their happiness, you can pause, take a breath, and say internally, "Dear Mom, dear Dad, I am your child. Your fate is your own, and I leave it with you with respect. I will do something good with the life you gave me." This sentence honors their precedence, their strength, and their destiny while simultaneously freeing you to turn towards your own life, your own partnership, and your own children, who are, in the order of precedence, your primary responsibility as an adult. Embodying this order brings a sense of groundedness and allows you to access your full strength. Integrating these orders is not a one-time fix, but an ongoing practice of embodiment and self-observation. A powerful way to support this process is through journaling and reflection. At the end of each day, or perhaps once a week, take some time to reflect on your interactions through the lens of these systemic laws. Ask yourself specific questions regarding belonging. Who did I mentally or verbally exclude today? How can I include them in my heart? Or did I honor my own right to belong in the groups I am part of? For systemic balance, you might ask, where did I overgive today? And what was my motivation? Where did I struggle to receive? And what did that feel like in my body? And concerning precedence, a potent inquiry is, in which relationships today did I feel like the big one when I should have been the small one, or vice versa? When did I feel out of my rightful place? Writing down your observations without judgment creates a map of your own systemic patterns. You begin to see the invisible forces at play in your seemingly ordinary conversations and feelings. Are you often feeling inexplicably exhausted? Perhaps you are carrying a burden that belongs to a parent. Do you feel a constant low-level resentment in your partnership? It might be pointing to a hidden imbalance in giving and receiving. This reflective practice is not about self-criticism. It is about cultivating a compassionate, systemic awareness. It's about being a curious observer of your own life, noticing the patterns and gently, with small conscious choices, beginning to align your behavior with the natural laws that foster love, strength, and peace. These small internal shifts are the seeds from which profound external transformation can grow. It has been a pleasure guiding you through this lesson, and I look forward to our next session. Welcome back to our exploration of the hidden dynamics within family systems. We're now delving deeper into specific patterns that can shape our lives in ways we might never have imagined. One of the most profound and frequently observed entanglements in family constellations is the unconscious identification with an ancestor. This isn't a simple case of having your grandfather's nose or your aunt's laugh. It's a much deeper soul-level connection. It's as if a part of you, out of a deeply buried love and loyalty that you may not even be aware of, has decided to live a life that mirrors the fate of a family member from a previous generation. This dynamic often emerges with an ancestor who was forgotten, excluded from the family narrative, or who endured a particularly difficult destiny. The family system, in its innate drive for wholeness and balance, seeks to remember these excluded members. In a sense, by unconsciously repeating their fate, a later descendant ensures that the forgotten one is not truly gone, that their story continues to be carried within the family soul. You might find yourself grappling with challenges that feel strangely out of place in your own life, yet they persist with an unshakable force, almost as if they belong to someone else. Let's consider a practical example to make this concept more tangible. Imagine a young entrepreneur who, despite being intelligent, hardworking, and having great ideas, repeatedly finds himself on the brink of financial ruin. He experiences cycles of near success, followed by catastrophic failure, leaving him in a perpetual state of scarcity. In his conscious mind, he might attribute this to bad luck, poor market timing, or personal failings. However, in a family constellation, a powerful truth might surface. We might discover that his grandfather, a man he barely knew, lost his entire prosperous business and fortune during a war. dying in poverty and shame. The family, unable to bear the pain of this loss, rarely spoke of him, effectively excluding him from their history. The grandson, out of a blind, childlike love for this forgotten grandfather, is unconsciously repeating this pattern of financial loss. His soul is saying, "Grandfather, I will be like you. I will not be more successful than you were. To honor you, I will also fail." This isn't a conscious choice, but a powerful, hidden allegiance that keeps him entangled in a destiny that is not his own, preventing him from living his own full potential. This dynamic isn't limited to financial struggles. It can manifest in our emotional lives with equal, if not greater, intensity. Think of a person who carries a pervasive, unexplained sadness throughout their life. They may have a good life by all external measures, a loving partner, healthy children, a stable career, yet they are shadowed by a melancholy they cannot shake. Friends and therapists might try to link it to childhood events or current stressors, but the sadness feels older, deeper, and not entirely their own. A constellation could reveal that this person is identified with a great aunt who died in childbirth at a young age. The family, overwhelmed with grief, couldn't properly mourn her and moved on, her name becoming a whisper associated with tragedy. The descendant, born decades later, unconsciously takes on that unmourned grief. It's a way for the family system to finally process the sorrow it couldn't face at the time. The person's deep, persistent sadness is not a personal pathology, but a systemic echo, a loyalty to the great aunt that says, "I see your sadness, and I will carry it for you so you are not forgotten." This identification keeps the person from fully embracing their own joy and happiness. In the context of a constellation workshop, the revelation of such an identification is often a moment of breathtaking clarity. It's not something that we deduce through intellectual analysis. It's something we witness. We might see the representative for the client, who knows nothing about the client's family history, suddenly adopt a specific physical posture. They might slump their shoulders in despair, or hold their stomach in pain, or gaze off into the distance with an expression of profound loss. Later, the client might confirm with a sense of shock and recognition, "That's exactly how my uncle looked after he came back from the war," or "My grandmother always held herself that way." The representative might even voice feelings or phrases that perfectly match the ancestor's experience. "It was all taken from me," or "I feel so alone and forgotten." This isn't acting, it is the knowing field giving form to the hidden truth, allowing the invisible loyalty to become visible for the first time. The energetic signature of the ancestor's fate becomes physically and emotionally present in the room through the representative, creating an undeniable and deeply moving experience for the client. The crucial step toward resolution, the healing movement, begins with this conscious recognition. The entanglement can only hold power as long as it remains hidden in the unconscious. Once we bring it into the light of awareness, its grip begins to loosen. The facilitator will guide the client to stand before the representative of the ancestor and truly see them. This isn't just a mental exercise, it's a profound soul-to-soul acknowledgement. The client is guided to see the ancestor not as a tragic figure to be pitied or fixed, but as a person who lived their own life and carried their own destiny with dignity. This act of seeing and honoring is the first step in differentiating oneself from the other. It breaks the spell of blind love that says, "I will be like you," and replaces it with a mature love that says, "I see you, and I see that your fate is not my fate." It's an act of profound respect for both the ancestor and for oneself. Following this acknowledgement, we often introduce what are known as healing sentences. These are simple, powerful statements that restore order and clarify boundaries. The client might be guided to say to the ancestor, "I see you, I honor your destiny. It was heavy, and you carried it with dignity." This sentence acknowledges the reality of what happened without judgment. Then a crucial separation is made. The client might continue, "You are you, and I am me. You have your destiny, and I have mine." This statement creates a clear and respectful boundary. It's not a rejection of the ancestor, but a clarification of roles and fates. The final and perhaps most important part of this movement is to ask for a blessing. The client may say, "With your blessing, I will now live my own life. Please look kindly upon me if my life is easier or happier or more successful." This transforms the entanglement from a burden into a source of strength, turning the ancestor from a figure of fate to be repeated into a benevolent presence in the background of one's own new life. This process of differentiation is what allows the client to lovingly release the inherited burden. Imagine untangling a knotted rope. It requires patience, respect for the knot, and a clear intention to separate the strands. In a similar way, we are not cutting the ancestor out of our life or our heart. On the contrary, by honoring their place and their unique fate, we give them their rightful dignity back, allowing them to finally rest. When the ancestor is seen and honored, the family system no longer needs a descendant to carry their fate for them. The client is then freed from the unconscious obligation. This freedom is palpable. Clients often report feeling lighter, as if a heavy weight has been lifted from their shoulders. They can then turn toward their own life, their own relationships, and their own future, not out of a sense of disloyal betrayal, but with the full, loving blessing of the ancestors who came before them. This is the path to reclaiming one's own life. We will continue to explore other common entanglements in our next session. Welcome back. In our exploration of systemic entanglements, we now turn to one of the most profound and often tragic dynamics, a pattern that binds the living to the dead in a way that can severely inhibit life. This particular entanglement is what we call following someone in death or illness. It's a deeply rooted, unconscious impulse that arises from love, but a love that has become tragically misguided. Imagine a situation where a family member, perhaps a parent, a sibling, or even a child, dies prematurely or under tragic circumstances. The shock, the grief, and the sense of injustice can be overwhelming for those left behind. In the midst of this profound pain, a deep-seated, almost magical form of thinking can take hold within a surviving family member. It is as if a part of their soul makes a secret vow, a hidden promise to the one who has departed. Subconsciously, they might say something to the effect of, "I will follow you," or "It is better that I go and you stay," or "Without you, my life has no meaning, so I will join you." This isn't a rational, conscious decision. It is a primal, emotional response driven by an immense, almost unbearable love and loyalty. It's a child's love for a parent, a sibling's bond with another, a parent's unending grief for a lost child. This hidden declaration sets in motion a destructive pattern of loyalty that can cast a long, dark shadow over the survivor's entire existence, preventing them from fully embracing their own life. The manifestations of this unconscious death wish can be varied and are often perplexing to the individual experiencing them, as well as to those around them. They might struggle with chronic, unexplained illnesses that have no clear medical origin, as if the body itself is trying to weaken and move towards an end. It can manifest as a persistent, deep-seated depression that resists conventional treatment, a blanket of sadness that seems to have no source in their present-day life. In more extreme cases, it can lead to suicidal ideation or actual attempts, a direct and overt expression of the desire to join the deceased. Sometimes the pattern is more subtle, showing up as a tendency towards being accident-prone, engaging in reckless behaviors, or unconsciously sabotaging opportunities for happiness, success, and healthy relationships. It is as if any step towards a full, vibrant life is perceived by the soul as a betrayal of the deceased family member. The inner logic, however flawed, is that it would be unfair to be happy, to be healthy, to live a long life when the one they loved so dearly was denied that very same opportunity. Consider the example of a young woman whose mother died of cancer when she was just a child. As she grows up, she may find herself unable to form lasting romantic partnerships or achieve her career goals despite being talented and capable. She might suffer from chronic fatigue or autoimmune disorders. On the surface, these seem like separate issues, but from a systemic perspective, we might see a hidden entanglement. Unconsciously, she may feel that to live a happy, fulfilled life, to get married, have children, be successful, would be to surpass her mother, to have more than her mother had. This can feel like a profound act of disloyalty. The inner child within her, still grieving her mother, might be saying, "How can I be happy when you are not here to be happy with me? How can I live fully when your life was cut short?" Her illnesses and failures then become a perverse tribute, a way of staying small and connected to her mother in tragedy. She is, in a very real sense, following her mother into a state of non-living, a half-life defined by suffering and limitation, all out of a deep and misunderstood love. In a family constellation workshop, our primary task is to bring this hidden dynamic out of the shadows and into the light of conscious awareness. This is not about blame or intellectual analysis. It is about creating a space where the deep somatic truth of the situation can be seen and felt. When a client sets up a constellation for their issue, whether it's depression, illness, or a pattern of failure, we might ask them to choose representatives for themselves and for the family member who died prematurely. As the representatives are placed in the knowing field, the hidden dynamic often becomes immediately visible. The representative for the client might be seen physically turning their back on life, represented perhaps by other figures or just an open space, and gazing intently with deep longing and sadness at the representative for the deceased person. They might even lie down on the floor or take steps towards the deceased, a clear physical enactment of the unconscious desire to follow them into death. This visual and energetic revelation is often a profound moment for the client as they witness an externalization of an inner reality they may never have been aware of. The turning point, the beginning of the healing movement, comes from honoring the truth of what happened and creating a new kind of connection, one that affirms life instead of denying it. It begins with acknowledging the deceased and the love that still flows towards them. The facilitator might guide the client's representative to speak a sentence of acknowledgement such as, "Dear Mother, I see you. I see your difficult fate, and it pains me deeply." The crucial next step is to help the client soul understand that true love and loyalty do not require self-destruction. The deceased, from their place in the family system, does not want the living to suffer. From the perspective of the soul, the dead want the living to live. We work to facilitate a new dialogue where the client can hear, in a sense, the blessing of the deceased. The representative for the deceased might be guided to turn to the client's representative and say something like, "My dear child, I am gone. My fate was my own. You belong to the living. Please live your life fully. It is the best way to honor my memory. This exchange paves the way for the client to consciously choose life, not as an act of betrayal, but as an act of honoring. The healing is often sealed with a specific, powerful sentence that the client says to the deceased representative. And what's important is that they say it from their heart, feeling the truth of it in their body. A powerful healing sentence in this context might be, "Dear Mother, I honor your place in my heart. I will always carry you with love." And then the critical shift. "And I will stay. I will stay in life. And out of love for you, I will make something good of it. I will live it fully in your memory." This statement transforms the dynamic. The loyalty is no longer expressed through self-negation, but is rechanneled into a commitment to live a good and meaningful life. It's a promise to not let the sacrifice of the deceased be in vain. By embracing their own life, the client gives the death of their loved one a different kind of meaning, turning a destructive loyalty into a life-affirming legacy that enriches the entire family system. This allows the client to finally turn away from death and face forward towards their own future, their own potential, and their own precious life. See you in the next lesson. Welcome back. In our exploration of common systemic entanglements, we now turn our attention to a particularly subtle yet profoundly impactful dynamic. We are going to delve into a phenomenon known as parentification. This term describes a situation where the natural order within a family system is inverted, and a child finds themselves taking on the role of a parent to their own parent. It's a significant disruption of the order of balance, a principle we've previously discussed, which dictates that in the parent-child relationship, the flow of love, care, and support moves from the parent to the child. The parent gives and the child receives. Parentification flips this on its head. The child who is meant to be small, receiving, and cared for instead becomes the giver, the caretaker, the one who is big. This is not about a child occasionally helping out with chores or offering a comforting hug. We are talking about a persistent, underlying dynamic where the child carries responsibilities that are far beyond their emotional and developmental capacity, effectively parenting their own parent. It is an entanglement born out of a deep instinctual love and loyalty, but one that carries a heavy price for the child. What causes this inversion to happen? The roots of parentification often lie in the parent's own unhealed wounds or circumstances that render them incapable of fully occupying their parental role. A parent might be dealing with a chronic illness, struggling with addiction, or be emotionally immature due to their own difficult childhood. Perhaps they've experienced a significant trauma, like the loss of a spouse or another child, which leaves them consumed by grief and unable to be present for the children who remain. In such situations, the system has a need. There is a vacuum in the parent role. A child driven by an innate and powerful love for their parent will often unconsciously step into this vacuum. It's a heroic attempt to keep the family system afloat, to provide the stability and care that is missing. The child becomes the parent's confidant, their emotional rock, the one they lean on for support, or even their practical caregiver, managing household tasks and looking after younger siblings. From the outside, a parentified child might even appear admirable. They are often described as mature for their age, responsible, and helpful. They seem so competent and self-sufficient. However, this apparent maturity is a survival strategy, not a sign of healthy development. The child is essentially forced to grow up too fast, sacrificing their own childhood needs in the process. They are robbed of the right to be carefree, to play, to be messy, and to simply be a child who is looked after. They learn very early on that their own needs are secondary to the needs of the parent. This creates a profound internal conflict. Their love and loyalty drive them to care for the parent, but in doing so, they are placed under an unbearable and inappropriate weight. They become big in the system when they are biologically and emotionally meant to be small. Their own journey of growing up is put on hold while they tend to the needs of the grown-up in their life. The consequences of this dynamic ripple far into the parentified child's adult life. As adults, they often carry an overdeveloped and sometimes crushing sense of responsibility for everything and everyone around them. They find it incredibly difficult to receive love, help, or care from others because their primary relational template taught them that their role is to give, not to take. Receiving can feel uncomfortable, undeserved, or even dangerous. This can create significant challenges in forming healthy peer relationships, both romantic and platonic. They might attract partners who are needy or who require fixing, thereby recreating the familiar dynamic from their childhood, or they might struggle to connect with equals, always feeling like they have to be the strong one, the one who has it all together, which prevents true intimacy and vulnerability from developing. A deep-seated feeling of chronic exhaustion or a simmering, unexplained resentment is also a very common feature for adults who were parentified as children. It's the exhaustion of a lifetime of carrying burdens that were never theirs to carry. So, how do we begin to heal this entanglement? The path to resolution lies in consciously and symbolically giving the role of parent back to the parent. This is a profound and often emotional process of restoring the correct order within the system. In a family constellation setting, this can be a powerful and visceral experience. The representative for the individual might be guided to physically bow before the representative of their parent. This act of bowing is not one of submission in a negative sense, but one of deep respect and acknowledgement. It is a gesture that communicates, "You are the big one, and I am the small one. You are the parent, and I am the child. I honor you, and I give this back to you." It's an internal movement that allows the individual to step back from the role of caretaker and to occupy their rightful place as the child. This healing movement allows the child within to finally receive. It creates the space for them to acknowledge the weight they have carried and to set it down, releasing the obligation that has defined so much of their life. It's about seeing the reality of the situation without blame or judgment, but with a clear understanding of the systemic forces at play. Accompanying this movement, a healing sentence might be used, something a representative might say to the parent, such as, "For a long time, I carried this for you. I did it out of love. Now, with respect, I leave it with you. I am just your child." This isn't about severing the connection or abandoning the parent. Rather, it is about redefining the connection on healthier terms. It is a profound act of self-liberation, freeing the individual from the entanglement so they can finally turn their attention and energy towards their own adult life, their own peer-level relationships, and their own destiny. See you in the next lesson. Welcome back. Today, we delve into a concept that is both incredibly subtle and powerfully formative, one that often traces back to the very dawn of our existence and shapes our capacity for connection for the rest of our lives. What we are exploring is something Bert Hellinger and other constellation facilitators observed time and again in their work, a dynamic they termed the interrupted reaching out movement. This isn't just a psychological theory, it's a somatic and emotional reality that gets imprinted in our nervous system before we even have words to describe it. Imagine an infant, utterly dependent, driven by a powerful instinctual impulse to connect with its primary caregiver, most often the mother. This is not a casual gesture. It's a survival mechanism, a biological imperative to reach for warmth, nourishment, safety, and love. The baby's entire being is geared towards this movement, a physical and energetic extension towards the source of life. In a perfectly attuned environment, the mother receives this reach. She meets the infant's need, and a beautiful, harmonious circuit of connection and trust is completed. The infant learns on a profound, cellular level that reaching out is good, that the world is a safe place, and that its needs will be met. This successful completion of the reaching out movement forms the very bedrock of what psychologists call a secure attachment style, building the foundation for a lifetime of healthy relationships. Now, let's consider a different scenario, one that is far more common than we might initially believe. The infant begins its natural, instinctual reach towards the mother, but at that crucial moment, the mother is unavailable. This unavailability doesn't need to be malicious or intentional. In fact, it rarely is. The mother might be suffering from postpartum depression. Her own unresolved trauma might be triggered, or perhaps she is physically ill and unable to respond. It could also be an external circumstance, such as the infant being placed in an incubator immediately after birth, a necessary medical intervention that nonetheless separates the child from the mother. The key element is that the infant's outward movement, this primal plea for connection, is not met. It reaches into a void. The energy of that reach, full of hope and need, has nowhere to go. It is, in effect, interrupted. This interruption is a profound shock to the infant's nascent system, a preverbal trauma that communicates a terrifying message. The source of life and safety is not there. In that moment of interruption, the infant is faced with an overwhelming reality it cannot process. It has no cognitive framework to understand a mother's depression or the necessity of a hospital stay. All it knows is that its fundamental movement towards life was met with absence. Consequently, the infant must make a decision to survive this perceived abandonment. It pulls back. The outward moving energy retracts, often turning inward, and a deep, unconscious resolution is formed. This resolution might sound something like, reaching out is dangerous, or it hurts too much to want something and not receive it. A more stoic, self-reliant decision might be, fine, I will do it myself, or I don't need anyone. This isn't a conscious thought process as we understand it. It's a bodily, somatic decision that becomes encoded in the child's developing psyche and physique. The natural flow of giving and receiving has been dammed at its very source, creating an energetic and emotional pattern that will persist long after the initial event is forgotten. As this child grows into an adult, the echoes of this interrupted movement reverberate through their life and relationships. These are often the people who find it incredibly difficult to ask for help, viewing it as a sign of weakness or an invitation for disappointment. They may have a deep, gnawing sense of loneliness coexisting with a paradoxical tendency to sabotage intimacy whenever it gets too close. You might see this in a partner who is loving and engaged one moment, but then inexplicably pulls away, creating distance precisely when connection deepens. In moments of conflict or vulnerability, their go-to response is to withdraw, to shut down, to retreat into that old familiar pattern of, I'll do it myself. They might find it immensely challenging to trust others fully, always keeping a part of themselves in reserve, prepared for the inevitable moment when the other person will fail to meet their reach. On a somatic level, this can manifest as chronic tension in the shoulders, arms, or chest, a physical armoring against the pain of that original unfulfilled longing. Let's consider a practical, albeit simplified, example to make this more concrete. Think of a man we'll call Alex. In his relationships, Alex is known for being fiercely independent. His partners often complain that he never lets them in, that he handles all his problems alone, and never shows vulnerability. When his girlfriend tries to offer him support during a stressful time at his job, he brushes her off, saying, I've got it. This isn't born from a lack of love for her, but from a deeply ingrained pattern. If we were to look at his systemic history, we might discover that his mother suffered a severe illness shortly after he was born, requiring a prolonged hospital stay. As an infant, his reaching out for his mother was met with the sterile environment of a hospital, with nurses who, while caring, could not replace that primary maternal bond. The infant Alex made a decision. I must rely only on myself. Now, as an adult, his girlfriend's loving reach is perceived by his nervous system as a potential threat, triggering the old pain of the original interruption and causing him to retract into his shell of self-sufficiency. In a family constellation setting, this is a dynamic we can bring into the light and work with directly. The process doesn't involve re-traumatizing the client, but rather creating a safe and contained space for the original movement to finally be completed. A representative for the client and a representative for the mother are placed in the knowing field. Often, the representative for the client will physically manifest the pattern. They may be unable to look at the mother, or their arms might feel heavy and unable to lift. The facilitator guides the process slowly, allowing the client's representative to acknowledge the frozen impulse within. Through carefully chosen healing sentences, we might give voice to the infant's pain. Perhaps having the representative say to the mother, I needed you and you weren't there. I have been waiting for you for a very long time. The goal is not to blame the parent, who often had their own difficult fate, but to see and acknowledge the reality of the child's experience. The truly transformative part of the work comes when we facilitate the completion of the movement. This has to be done with exquisite slowness, allowing the client's system to feel safe enough to try again. The facilitator might encourage the client's representative to take a small step, to make a tiny gesture with their hand, to simply allow the impulse to reach to emerge once more. The representative for the mother, now able to be present, is guided to see the child and open her arms to receive the reach. When the client's representative can finally, symbolically, complete that movement and feel the embrace of the mother, something profound shifts on a pre-verbal somatic level. It is as if a circuit that was broken 40 years ago is finally reconnected. This new embodied experience overwrites the old pattern of reaching out is unsafe with a new truth. It is possible to reach out and be received. This healing doesn't erase the past, but it restores the flow of love and allows for a new capacity for trust and connection to emerge in the present. I'll see you in the next lesson. Hello again, and welcome back. It's good to have you here as we continue our journey into the healing movements of family constellations. We are now stepping into one of the most fundamental and often most potent aspects of this entire process, the simple yet profound act of acknowledging what is. It might sound almost too simple to be effective, but I assure you, the power that resides in pure acknowledgement is immense, and it serves as the bedrock upon which all other healing movements are built. So much of the pain we carry, the anxieties that plague us, and the patterns that hold us captive stem from a deep-seated resistance to reality. We expend an incredible amount of our life force fighting against what has already happened or what is currently true. We might tell ourselves stories like, "My childhood should have been happier," or "If only my father had been more present, my life would be better." Or we might live in denial of a significant family trauma, pretending it never occurred simply because it's too painful to look at. This constant battle against the unchangeable past is exhausting, a perpetual drain on our energy that could otherwise be used to create a meaningful present and future. Acknowledgement, in the context of family constellations, is the courageous act of dropping this fight. It is the moment we stop, take a breath, and allow ourselves to see the truth of our family system without the filters of judgment, blame, or wishful thinking. I want to be very clear about what acknowledgement means and what it does not mean. Acknowledging what is not the same as condoning or approving of harmful actions or painful events. To see that your grandfather was a harsh and unforgiving man is not to say that his behavior was acceptable or right. To acknowledge that a great aunt was excluded from the family and died in poverty is not to agree with the family's decision. Instead, it is a statement of fact. It's a recognition of the reality that unfolded. The healing power lies not in changing the past, but in changing our relationship to it. When we stand in front of the truth, even a very difficult truth, and say, "Yes, this is how it was," we stop being a victim of the story we've been telling about it. We cease to be defined by our resistance. In a physical constellation, this shift is often palpable. You can literally witness the representatives for family members relax their posture, their faces softening as this wave of truth washes over the system. The representative for the person who has been fighting reality might finally let out a long-held breath, their shoulders dropping as they release a burden they didn't even know they were carrying so consciously. Let's consider an example to make this more tangible. Imagine a woman who feels a constant, unexplained sadness and a sense that she can never truly be successful or happy. In her constellation, it becomes clear that her grandmother lost her first child at a very young age, a tragedy that was never spoken of again. The family, in an attempt to spare themselves further pain, essentially erased this child from their history. The woman, our client, has been unconsciously entangled with this forgotten great uncle. Her sadness is not entirely her own. She is carrying the unresolved grief of her grandmother and honoring the fate of the excluded child. The reality to be acknowledged here is multifaceted. It includes the truth of the child's short life and death, the immense pain and grief of the grandmother, and the family's subsequent decision to exclude this painful memory. The fight against reality in this case has been the family's pretense that this child never existed. The constant suffering comes from this systemic lie, this gaping hole in the family soul that everyone subconsciously feels, but no one has dared to look at. The first healing movement here is not a complex ritual, but a simple and direct acknowledgement. The representative for the client might be guided by the facilitator to turn towards the representative of the forgotten child and simply look, to truly see them. Then, perhaps they say a simple sentence, not of apology or explanation, but of pure recognition: "I see you." This is followed by acknowledging the grandmother's fate, perhaps by bowing to her and saying, "I see your great pain," and finally acknowledging the whole system's reality. A child was lost, and it was too painful to bear. In these moments of pure seeing, something extraordinary happens. The energy that was being used to maintain the secret, to keep the lid on the grief, to fight the reality of this loss, is suddenly liberated. The sadness the client has been carrying can now be seen for what it is: a loyal tribute to a forgotten ancestor. By acknowledging the truth, she is no longer bound to carry the unprocessed emotion for the system. She can leave the fate of her great uncle and the grief of her grandmother with them, where it belongs, and in doing so, she becomes free to live her own life. This principle applies not just to dramatic hidden traumas, but also to the more common everyday resistance we have towards our families. Many people spend their lives wishing for different parents. They might think, if my mother had been more loving, I wouldn't have these attachment issues. Or, if my father had believed in me, I would be more confident. These statements might contain a kernel of truth, but they keep us trapped in a perpetual state of childhood longing and resentment. The act of acknowledgement here is to look at our parents as they truly are, and as they were, with all their limitations, flaws, and personal histories. It means seeing them not just as our parents, but as people who had their own parents, their own entanglements, and their own unfulfilled longings. It means acknowledging, yes, this is my mother, this is the mother life gave me, this is the life that came to me through her. Again, this is not about saying their behavior was okay or that it didn't hurt you. It is about dropping the fantasy of the parents you wish you had and accepting the reality of the parents you did have. This acceptance is the key that unlocks the door to your own adulthood. As long as you are fighting with the reality of your parents, you remain a child in relation to them, waiting for something they could never give. When we say yes to life exactly as it has come to us through our specific lineage, we are performing a deeply powerful act of self-acceptance. Our life did not begin with us. It is a river that has flowed through countless generations to reach us. To reject the source of that river, our parents and ancestors, is in a way to reject a fundamental part of ourselves. Acknowledging their fates, their struggles, their contributions, and their shortcomings without judgment is how we can finally stand in our own place, fully and completely. In a constellation, this might be represented by the client's representative finally being able to turn away from their parents and face forward towards their own life and future. Before acknowledgement, they might have been staring at their parents, locked in a cycle of longing, anger, or demand. Once they can see and accept the reality, this is who you are and this is who I am, they are no longer dependent on the past for their sense of identity or well-being. They have taken back the energy that was tied up in that struggle and can now invest it in their own relationships, their careers, and their own personal growth. This is the foundational gift of acknowledgement. It frees up the present from the mortgage of the past. It's a crucial first step on the path to resolution. See you in the next lesson. Welcome back to our exploration of family constellations. In our previous lesson, we discussed the profound power of simply acknowledging reality, of seeing things as they are. Now we are going to build upon that foundation and delve into one of the most direct and potent tools for facilitating resolution within a family system, the use of healing sentences. When we talk about healing sentences, it's crucial to immediately dispel a common misconception. These are not positive affirmations in the way you might typically understand them, like repeating, "I am successful and abundant" to yourself in the mirror. While affirmations have their place in personal development, they operate primarily on the level of the individual psyche and conscious mind, aiming to reprogram our personal beliefs. Healing sentences in the context of family constellations work on a much deeper systemic level. They are not about manifesting a new reality through willpower or repetition. Rather, they are simple, direct statements that give voice to the unspoken truth of the system, acknowledging what asterisk is asterisk with clarity and respect. They function as verbal acknowledgments that bypass the narratives and defenses of our conscious ego to speak directly to the systemic conscience, the regulating force we've discussed earlier that seeks balance and order for the entire family soul. These sentences are powerful because they don't try to change reality, they simply name it. Let's consider one of the most fundamental dynamics in any family system, the relationship between a parent and a child. A common entanglement we see, which we've touched upon as parentification, is when this natural order becomes inverted. The child, for various systemic reasons, takes on a role that is too big for them, effectively becoming a psychological parent to their own parent. In a constellation, you might see a representative for a child physically positioned higher than the parent, or carrying a heavy burden for them. The healing sentence in such a scenario is beautifully simple yet profoundly effective. You are the big one, and I am the small one. When a representative for a child speaks this sentence to the representative for the parent, the effect can be immediate and palpable. It's a statement of pure fact, a realignment with the fundamental order of life. Parents come first, so they are big. Children come later, so they are small. Saying this aloud doesn't invent this truth. It simply unburdens the child from a role they were never meant to carry, allowing them to finally receive love and support instead of feeling obligated to give it in an inappropriate way. It permits the parent to reclaim their rightful place and responsibility, restoring the natural flow of love from the source downwards through the generations. The magic of these sentences lies in their resonance with what we've called the knowing field. They are not intellectual constructs or clever psychological tricks. Instead, they emerge from the very movement of the constellation itself. As a facilitator, one learns to listen deeply not just to the words people say, but to the silent language of the body and the spatial relationships between representatives. The field is always trying to reveal what needs to be seen and acknowledged for healing to occur. The right healing sentence is one that accurately articulates the truth that is already present and seeking expression. It's like finding the exact key that fits a very specific lock. You can try many different sentences, but when the right one is spoken, the entire system responds. You might witness representatives suddenly bursting into tears of recognition, a long-held physical tension in someone's body finally releasing, or a palpable shift in the atmosphere of the room from one of stagnation to one of flowing movement and relief. This is the confirmation that the sentence has landed not just in the ears of the representatives, but in the heart of the system itself. Another crucial area where healing sentences bring resolution is in restoring the principle of belonging, which, as we know, is the first and most fundamental order of love. Every member of a family system has an equal right to belong, yet so often individuals are excluded, forgotten, or shamed due to difficult fates. This could be a child who was stillborn, an ancestor who committed a crime, or a family member who suffered from severe mental illness. The system remembers these exclusions, and often a later descendant will unconsciously identify with the excluded person, reenacting their fate out of a blind, loyal love. The healing movement here is to consciously bring the excluded member back into the fold. A powerful sentence for this is to look towards the place of that ancestor and say, from the heart, "You have a place in my heart," or "I see you and you belong to our family." This act of seeing and honoring reintegrates the lost member, freeing the descendant from their entanglement. It doesn't condone any difficult actions the ancestor may have taken. It simply acknowledges their existence and their rightful place, allowing the system to find peace and become whole again. These sentences also play a vital role in navigating the complexities of our romantic partnerships, both past and present. Relationships that end often leave behind a residue of blame, anger, or unresolved grief, which can systemically impact our ability to fully engage in a new partnership. A common dynamic is to unconsciously carry loyalty to a former partner, which prevents us from being truly available to a new one. A healing sentence directed towards an ex-partner can be incredibly freeing. For instance, standing in front of a representative for a former partner and saying, "I honor what was good between us. I take my share of the responsibility for the end, and I leave your share with you. I wish you well." This isn't about forgiveness in the conventional sense, nor is it about letting the other person off the hook. It is a statement of mature acknowledgement. It separates what belongs to you from what belongs to them, honors the value of the relationship for its time, and formally marks its conclusion, creating a clear and respectful space for you to move forward into a new relationship without carrying the baggage of the old one. The formulation of these sentences is an art, not a science. While there are common archetypal sentences that apply to many situations, the most powerful ones are often tailored to the specific nuances of the constellation unfolding. They must be spoken from the heart, not just recited from memory. The intention behind the words is paramount. You can say, "I honor you," with a tone of resentment, and the system will feel the incongruity. But when you say it from a place of genuine, humble acknowledgement, the energy shifts. This is why, in a workshop setting, a facilitator might suggest a sentence to a representative. The facilitator isn't putting words in their mouth, they are offering a potential key based on their perception of the system's needs. The representative is then free to try the sentence on and see if it feels true. Sometimes a representative will naturally come up with their own words, which can be even more powerful because they emerge spontaneously from their felt experience within the field. This process is a delicate dance between observation, intuition, and heartfelt expression. You don't need to be in a formal constellation to begin working with the power of healing sentences. This is a tool you can integrate into your own personal practice of reflection and inner work. By mapping your family system and reflecting on the dynamics you are aware of, you can begin to identify where the orders of love might be out of balance. Perhaps you feel an inexplicable weight of responsibility for one of your parents. You could, in a quiet moment of reflection, visualize that parent in front of you and softly say to yourself, "You are the parent, I am the child. I received my life from you, and that is enough. Your fate is your own, and mine is my own." Notice what happens in your body as you say this. Is there a sense of release, of sadness, of relief? This inner work can bring remarkable clarity and begin to gently untangle the knots within your own soul, bringing peace to your inner world and shifting how you show up in your relationships. It is a way of honoring your system and your place within it, one truthful acknowledgement at a time. I look forward to seeing you in our next lesson. Welcome back. In our journey through healing movements, we now arrive at one of the most profound and physically expressive gestures in family constellations, the act of bowing. You might be asking yourself, what is so special about a bow? In many cultures, it's a simple sign of respect, a greeting, or a farewell. But within the systemic context, a bow becomes a powerful, nonverbal language that speaks directly to the soul of the family system. It is a physical manifestation of an inner attitude, a movement that can shift deeply ingrained patterns of arrogance, resentment, and disorder. When we perform a bow in a constellation, or even visualize it in our private reflections, we are not simply bending our body, we are bending our ego to a larger truth. This gesture is a key that can unlock the flow of love where it has been blocked, restoring order and allowing us to step into our own strength. We're going to explore how this deceptively simple movement addresses the orders of love, particularly the order of precedence, and how it can bring profound peace and resolution to long-standing conflicts. Let's begin by considering the most common and perhaps most significant use of the bow, bowing to one's parents. As we've discussed, the third order of love dictates that those who came before have precedence. Our parents came before us. They are the source of our life. In the systemic view, this makes them big, and us, the children, small. This isn't a judgment on our intelligence, success, or moral character. It is a simple, unchangeable fact of existence. Life flows from them to us, and not the other way around. However, many of us, often due to difficult childhoods, hurts, or disappointments, unconsciously reverse this order. We stand in judgment of our parents, believing we know better, that they failed us, or that they owe us something more. This is a state of childish arrogance, a heavy burden that keeps us entangled and prevents us from fully receiving the gift of life they gave us. The act of bowing before them, whether with representatives in a constellation or in our mind's eye, physically corrects this imbalance. It is a gesture that says, "You are big and I am small. You gave me life, and that is enough. I take you as my parents with everything that was." When a representative for a client in a constellation finally makes this movement, the shift in the energy of the entire field is often palpable. The representative, by bowing, lets go of the fight, the criticism, and the demand for the parents to be different from who they are. It's an act of profound humility and acceptance. This gesture is not about condoning harmful behavior or pretending that pain did not occur. It is about acknowledging a fundamental truth that transcends personal history. They are the source, and we are the recipient. By bowing, we are not forgiving them for our own sake in a transactional way. We are honoring the lineage and the life force that flows through them to us. This movement allows us to finally take our parents fully, just as they are. In doing so, we are, in effect, taking our own life fully, without reservation. We stop looking back in anger or longing and can finally turn our face forward toward our own future, fueled by the life force we have now completely received. This act loosens the chains of the past and allows us to stand on our own 2 feet, free and yet connected. The power of this gesture extends beyond our relationship with our parents. We can also bow to fate. What does this mean? In life, we all encounter events and circumstances that are larger than us, things we cannot change. These can include a tragic accident, a severe illness, the early death of a loved one, or even historical events that impacted our family, like war or famine. We can spend years, even a lifetime, fighting against these realities filled with rage, grief, or a sense of injustice. This shouldn't have happened, we tell ourselves, and this internal struggle consumes enormous amounts of our life energy. Bowing to fate is a gesture of surrender, but not of defeat. It is an acknowledgement that some forces and destinies are bigger than our individual will. By bowing, we say, I see what is. I respect the forces at play, even if I don't understand them. I accept my destiny as it is. This act of surrender ends the exhausting internal war, bringing a sense of deep peace and allowing us to find our place within the larger tapestry of life and death. In a practical constellation setting, the facilitator might suggest a bow when a representative is stuck in a position of judgment, arrogance, or a struggle against an unchangeable reality. The facilitator might see, for instance, a representative for a child standing tall and looking down on the representatives for their parents, a clear physical sign of a reversed hierarchy. They might then invite the representative to try the movement, to physically kneel and bow their head before the parents. It is always an invitation, never a command, as the movement must come from a place of inner readiness to be effective. Sometimes the representative can't do it at first. The inner resistance is too strong. This itself is valuable information. But when the bow happens, it often marks the turning point of the entire constellation, leading to a resolution where everyone in the system can find a new, more peaceful place. The same principle applies when facing a representative for fate or a difficult destiny. The bow signals the end of the client's fight and the beginning of a new relationship with their life's circumstances, one based on acceptance rather than resistance. You don't need to be in a formal constellation to access the healing power of this movement. You can use it in your own personal practice. If you find yourself holding on to anger or judgment towards your parents, you can try a simple visualization. Close your eyes, imagine your parents standing before you, and in your mind, see yourself bowing deeply before them. Feel the sensations in your body as you perform this inner gesture. Acknowledge them as the big ones and yourself as the small one. You might say silently, "Thank you for the life you gave me. I'll do something good with it." Notice what shifts inside you. Similarly, if you are struggling with a difficult fate, you can visualize it as a presence before you and perform an inner bow of acknowledgement. This practice can help dissolve inner conflicts, release long-held burdens, and allow you to find your rightful and more peaceful place within the larger systems you belong to. It is a practice of humility that ultimately restores our own dignity and strength. We'll explore more of these potent interventions as we continue. For now, reflect on this powerful and humbling gesture. See you in the next lesson. Welcome back. Today we delve into one of the most profound and healing movements within family constellations, the active process of reintegrating those who have been excluded from the family system. In our exploration of the orders of love, we established that a fundamental need of the family system, driven by what we call the systemic conscience, is for completeness. Every single member who has ever belonged to the system has an inalienable right to that belonging. When a member is excluded, forgotten, shamed, or otherwise pushed out of the family's conscious awareness, it creates a significant disturbance, a tear in the fabric of the system. This exclusion doesn't make the person disappear. Instead, the system seeks to rebalance itself by having a later member unconsciously identify with or represent the excluded individual. This entanglement can manifest as unexplained sadness, a pattern of failure, illness, or even a feeling of not truly belonging in one's own life. Therefore, the path to resolution and healing often lies in consciously and actively bringing the excluded back into the fold, a process we call reintegration. The first step in this healing journey is identification. We must ask ourselves who has been forgotten, who is the skeleton in our family closet. This requires a kind of gentle, compassionate detective work. Excluded members can take many forms, and often their exclusion is born from pain, shame, or trauma that the family found too difficult to bear at the time. Consider, for instance, a child who was stillborn or died in infancy. The grief may have been so overwhelming that the parents never spoke of them again, effectively erasing them from the family narrative. Similarly, an ex-partner of a parent or grandparent, especially if the separation was acrimonious or involved scandal, might be deliberately forgotten. We might also find relatives who suffered from severe mental illness, were institutionalized, or took their own lives, their stories silenced due to social stigma. Even a family member who committed a crime or brought shame upon the family name is often cut out of the story, yet their energetic presence and their right to belong remain. The key is to look for the gaps, the silences, and the stories that are told with a nervous or heavy energy. Once we have identified an excluded individual, the next movement is one of acknowledgement. This is a crucial and often deeply moving step. The simplest yet most powerful way to begin this process is to speak their name aloud. Saying the name of the forgotten uncle, the stillborn sister, or the grandfather's first love breaks the silence that has perpetuated their exclusion for generations. This act of naming brings them from the shadow of the unconscious into the light of conscious awareness. It is a declaration that they existed, that their life mattered, and that their fate is a part of the family's shared history. In a constellation setting, a representative for the excluded person is chosen. At first, this representative might stand apart from the family group, perhaps with their back turned or on the floor, mirroring their position within the system's memory. The act of acknowledgement begins when other family members consciously turn their attention towards this representative, truly seeing them for the first time. Following acknowledgement, we proceed to the act of giving the excluded person their rightful place. This is more than just a mental exercise, it is a physical and energetic shift that reorganizes the system. In a constellation, this is visually represented by bringing the representative for the excluded member into the circle of the family. The other representatives are guided to make space, to open their ranks and allow this person to stand among them. Finding the rightful place is critical. It is not just any place, but the one that aligns with the order of precedence. For example, a first wife belongs next to her former husband before the second wife. A deceased older sibling belongs in their birth order position among their siblings. This physical repositioning signals to the entire system that the imbalance is being corrected and that wholeness is being restored. The other members of the system are then invited to turn and face the newly included member, creating a powerful field of recognition. This movement of inclusion is often sealed with a healing sentence. As we have discussed, these sentences are not mere affirmations, they are statements of fact that resonate with the soul of the system. A family member, often the one most entangled, might be guided to say to the representative of the excluded, "We see you now, you are one of us, you belong with us." Or more specifically, "You were my grandfather's first wife, your fate is part of our family's story. We give you a place of honor in our hearts." These words land with tremendous force, satisfying the systemic conscience's deep-seated need for completeness. The simple act of saying "you have a place" validates the excluded person's existence and right to belong. This can release a torrent of emotion, grief, relief, love, as the blocked energy in the system finally begins to flow freely again, washing away the old shame and silence. The profound effect of this reintegration is that the descendant who was unconsciously carrying the burden of the excluded person is now freed. When the family as a whole takes responsibility for remembering and honoring a member, the individual no longer needs to do it for them through their symptoms or difficult fate. In the constellation, we often see this release physically. The representative for the entangled descendant might take a deep breath, their shoulders might relax, or they may feel a wave of warmth and peace. They are disentangled from the fate of the ancestor because that ancestor's fate has now been seen, acknowledged, and honored by the collective. The unconscious identification dissolves because its purpose, to remind the system of the missing member, has been fulfilled. The descendant is then free to live their own life, with their own fate, no longer bound to a past they didn't even know they were carrying. You can apply this principle in your own life even without a formal constellation. You can begin by doing the research, looking at old photos, and asking questions about your family history to identify who might have been left out. Create a small ritual to honor them. You could light a candle and say their name, adding their name and dates to your family tree diagram. You might say a simple sentence like, "I see you, and I give you a place in my heart. You belong to our family." This private act of inclusion can be surprisingly powerful. It is a gesture of respect and love that ripples backward through the generations, bringing peace to the ancestors. More importantly, it brings freedom and a deeper sense of belonging to you, the living, allowing you to stand more fully and resourcefully in your own life. We will explore this further in our upcoming sessions. Welcome back. It's time to transition from the world of concepts and theories into the deeply personal landscape of your own family system. Up until now, we've explored the fundamental principles that govern family systems, the orders of love, and the various ways entanglements can manifest in our lives. We've discussed these ideas in a somewhat abstract sense, using generalized examples to illustrate the points. This theoretical foundation is crucial. Without it, the work we are about to do would lack context and meaning. However, knowledge truly becomes wisdom when it is applied. This lesson marks a significant turning point in our journey together. We are moving from the what and the why to the how and the who, specifically how these dynamics play out within your unique lineage and who the key players are in your own ancestral story. This is where the work becomes tangible, practical, and profoundly intimate. The primary tool we will use for this exploration is called a genogram. You may be familiar with a family tree, which typically shows names and lines of descent. A genogram, however, is a much richer and more dynamic document. Think of it not just as a map of who is related to whom, but as a detailed chart of the family's emotional and historical life. It's a visual representation of the systemic field itself, capturing not just births and deaths, but the significant events and relational patterns that pulsate through the generations. Creating a genogram is an act of deep seeing and profound respect. It is an exercise in gathering the scattered pieces of your family's history and assembling them into a coherent picture, allowing you to observe your own place within this complex and beautiful tapestry. Let's begin the practical process of gathering the data for your genogram. You will want to start with the basics, mapping out 3 generations, yourself and your siblings, your parents and their siblings, and your grandparents on both sides. For each individual, you will want to record their name, date of birth, and date of death, if applicable. This is the foundational skeleton of your map. Now we start adding the layers of systemic information. We need to look for what Bert Hellinger identified as systemically significant fates. This includes not just the people who lived full lives, but also those whose time in the family was tragically short. It's crucial to include any children who were stillborn, miscarried, or aborted. In the systemic view, these souls belong to the family system, and their exclusion can create a powerful disturbance that later generations may unconsciously carry. When you are mapping out your parents' and grandparents' generations, be sure to include all of their respective siblings. Don't just list the aunts and uncles you knew. Try to find out if there were any siblings who died in infancy or childhood. These forgotten children hold a significant place in the system's memory. A mother who lost her first child before your parent was born carries that loss within her, and it shapes her relationship with her subsequent children in ways that are often unspoken but deeply felt. The system strives for wholeness, and it remembers everyone. Part of this mapping process is to consciously bring these forgotten members back into the light of awareness, restoring their rightful place within the family constellation. Now, we must consider relationships and partnerships. For your parents and grandparents, note the dates they were married or began their partnership. It is equally important, if not more so, to find out about any significant previous partners they had. Was your father engaged to someone before he met your mother? Did your grandmother have a great love before she married your grandfather? Perhaps someone lost in a war? These earlier bonds, especially if they ended tragically or were left unresolved, can create a silent loyalty or entanglement. The energy of that first bond doesn't just disappear, it remains in the systemic field. A later partner may unconsciously feel the presence of the former, or a child might feel a pull towards that unresolved fate without ever knowing the story consciously. Next, we expand our data collection to include what can be termed difficult fates. These are the events and circumstances that profoundly impact the life of an individual and ripple through the entire family system. Did anyone in the family suffer from a serious or chronic illness, a significant physical or mental disability, or an addiction to alcohol or drugs? Was there a bankruptcy or a major loss of family fortune? Did anyone commit a crime or spend time in prison? Conversely, was anyone a victim of a significant crime? It is also essential to note any adoptions, both those who were adopted into the family and those who were given up for adoption. These events create powerful currents in the systemic river, and understanding where they occurred is key to understanding the downstream effects. We must also look at larger collective fates that engulf the family. Migration is a huge one. When a family leaves its homeland, there is a profound energetic break. They leave behind ancestors, cultural roots, and a way of life. This act of leaving, whether it was forced by war, famine, and persecution, or chosen for economic opportunity, leaves an indelible mark. Note when and why your ancestors migrated. Similarly, note any involvement in wars. Who fought, who died, who was left behind. War trauma doesn't just affect the soldier, it affects the spouse waiting at home, the children who grow up with a traumatized parent, and the entire system that has to contend with the violence and loss. These large-scale events are not separate from the family's intimate life, they are woven directly into its fabric. The most challenging part of this process can be identifying those who were excluded, shamed, or forgotten. This goes beyond children who died young. Was there a family member who was ostracized for their lifestyle, their sexual orientation, or for marrying someone the family disapproved of? Was there someone with a mental illness who was institutionalized and never spoken of again? Perhaps someone was disinherited or had a falling out and was cut off from the family completely. These exclusions create a vacuum in the system, and as we've learned, the system abhors a vacuum. A later born member, out of a deep unconscious love and loyalty, may identify with this excluded person, repeating their fate or carrying their unresolved pain as a way of saying, I see you, you belong. As you gather this information, you may run into gaps, secrets, and areas where people are reluctant to talk. That's perfectly normal and in itself is systemically relevant information. The silence around a particular person or event is often a signpost pointing directly to a significant entanglement or trauma. Do not force the issue or upset family members. Simply make a note on your genogram. Great Aunt Clara, no one will talk about her, or grandfather's time in the war is a forbidden topic. These areas of silence are just as important as the facts you uncover. They represent the parts of the system that are holding their breath, waiting for acknowledgement. The act of simply noting the silence is a step toward honoring what is hidden. Once you have gathered as much information as you can, you will begin to draw your genogram. The standard format uses squares for males and circles for females. A horizontal line connecting a square and a circle represents a marriage or partnership, and vertical lines dropping down from that line lead to their children, who are listed from left to right in order of birth. Deceased individuals are typically marked with an X through their shape. You can create your own symbols to denote other information, a wavy line for a conflicted relationship, a broken line for a separation, or different colors to track things like addiction or a specific illness across generations. The visual layout itself will start to reveal patterns you might not have noticed otherwise. Look at your completed map. You are now looking at a picture of your systemic field. This is not just a collection of names and dates, it is a story of love, loss, resilience, and fate. Begin to look for patterns. Do you see a recurrence of a particular illness in every generation? Is there a pattern of men dying young or women being left to raise children alone? Do you notice that you share a birthday or name with an ancestor who had a difficult fate? Do you see how your own life challenges might be connected to an unspoken loyalty to someone who was excluded or forgotten 2 generations before you? This is not about blaming your ancestors. It is about seeing the larger forces you are a part of. This process of mapping your family system is a profound healing movement in itself. By taking the time to research, inquire, and document, you are performing an act of honoring. You are saying to every single member of your system, I see you, I acknowledge your fate, you have a place. For the first time, you may be seeing the whole picture, including the painful and difficult parts that the family may have tried to forget. This act of inclusive seeing begins to restore order. It allows the energy that was tied up in keeping secrets or masking pain to be released. You are becoming a conscious rather than an unconscious participant in your family's story. The genogram you create is your personal guide. It is a foundational document for all the self-reflection that follows. It provides clues and points to potential entanglements that may be impacting your relationships, your health, your career, and your overall sense of well-being. Having this map allows you to approach your personal challenges with a much broader perspective. Instead of seeing an issue as solely your problem, you can begin to ask, what larger systemic dynamic might this be connected to? For whom in my system might I be carrying this? This shift in perspective is the gateway to real and lasting change. Take your time with this process. It is not a race. It may take weeks or even months to gather the information, and the emotional impact of what you uncover can be significant. Be gentle with yourself as you do this work. The goal is not to create a perfect, complete document, as that is often impossible. The goal is to engage in the act of looking, of remembering, and of honoring. The genogram is a living document that you can add to over time as new information or insights come to light. It is your personal key to understanding the hidden dynamics that have shaped you. We will build upon this foundational work in our upcoming lessons. See you there. Hello again, and welcome back. In our journey so far, we've explored the foundational principles of family constellations, and now we'll turn our attention to one of the most significant areas of our lives, our intimate relationships. When we enter into a partnership, we don't just connect with another individual, we are, in essence, connecting with their entire family system, and they with ours. This is a profound and often overlooked truth. The principles of family constellations provide a powerful lens through which we can understand the complex, often hidden dynamics that shape our romantic connections. It allows us to move beyond the surface level conflicts and frustrations to see the deeper systemic forces at play. This perspective shifts us from a place of blame and misunderstanding towards one of empathy, shared awareness, and a more conscious, mature love that has the resilience to navigate life's challenges. Let's begin by revisiting a crucial principle we've discussed, the order of balance, which governs the exchange of giving and taking. In a healthy partnership, there is a continuous flowing exchange. I give something to you, and you, feeling the positive effect of what you've received, feel a natural desire to give something back, perhaps a little bit more. This creates a beautiful, ever-deepening cycle of positive exchange that strengthens the bond between you. The currency of this exchange isn't just material, it's love, support, time, affection, and acknowledgement. When this flow is disrupted, when one partner consistently gives more than they receive or takes more than they give, the system falls out of balance, creating resentment, distance, and a sense of injustice that erodes the foundation of the relationship. Consider a couple where one partner, let's call her Sarah, constantly organizes their social life, manages the household finances, and plans their vacations. Her partner, Tom, happily goes along with these plans but rarely initiates or contributes to the effort. While Sarah might initially do this out of love, over time she may begin to feel a growing sense of being an unappreciated parent rather than an equal partner. The balance is off. Tom is primarily a taker in this dynamic, and Sarah a giver. For balance to be restored, Tom needs to acknowledge Sarah's contributions and actively find ways to give back, not just what he thinks she wants, but what truly is needed to restore equity, bringing his own energy and initiative into the partnership. It's about consciously seeking that equilibrium where both partners feel seen, valued, and that their contributions matter. The order of precedence, which honors that which came first, is also profoundly important in our relationships, especially in the context of blended families or when one or both partners have had significant previous relationships. When a new relationship begins, it must respect the place of the previous ones. The former partner, especially if they are the parent of shared children, holds a permanent place in the system. Trying to exclude them or diminish their importance creates a systemic disturbance that the children and often the new relationship will carry. The new partner must acknowledge, "You had a life before me, and I respect that. Your previous partner has a place, and I will not try to take it." This act of acknowledgement creates peace and allows the new relationship to find its own proper place and thrive without being burdened by the unresolved issues of the past. Imagine a man, David, who marries a woman, Maria, who has a child from her first marriage. If David tries to act as if her first husband never existed, or if he criticizes him in front of the child, he is violating the order of precedence. The child will feel a loyalty conflict, torn between their father and their stepfather. The new relationship between David and Maria will be burdened by this tension. A healthier, systemically aware approach would be for David to respectfully acknowledge the child's father, perhaps saying something to his new wife like, "I honor him as the father of your child. I will find my own place here alongside him, not in his place." This simple yet powerful acknowledgement frees the child, respects the past, and allows the new family system to find a more stable and loving foundation. A crucial step towards greater empathy in our partnerships is to truly understand that our partner is just as deeply enmeshed in their own family system as we are in ours. Their patterns of communication, their fears, their ways of showing love or withholding it are often not just personal choices, but are echoes of loyalties and dynamics from their family of origin. When your partner reacts in a way that seems disproportionate or confusing, instead of immediately judging them, you can ask yourself, what in their family system might this be connected to? This inquiry shifts the energy from conflict to curiosity and compassion, opening up a space for deeper understanding rather than escalating a fight. You begin to see them not as an adversary, but as another soul navigating their own ancestral currents. Furthermore, our own unresolved entanglements inevitably show up in our intimate relationships. For example, if you experienced parentification as a child, where you had to take on adult responsibilities and care for your parents, you might unconsciously seek a partner who needs saving or fixing. You might find yourself overfunctioning, giving too much, and then feeling resentful when your efforts aren't reciprocated, replaying the old dynamic from your childhood. You are not relating to your partner as an equal, but as a child you must care for. Understanding this pattern is the first step toward breaking it. It allows you to consciously choose to relate to your partner from an adult to adult stance, seeking balance and mutual care rather than repeating a painful past. Similarly, if you carry the wound of an interrupted reaching out movement, that moment in childhood when you reached for a parent and they were unavailable, causing you to pull back, you might find it difficult to fully trust and receive love in your adult relationship. You might unconsciously keep your partner at a distance, fearing the pain of that original rejection. When your partner reaches for you, you might flinch or withdraw, not because of anything they've done, but because their loving gesture activates a deep, pre-verbal memory of disappointment and hurt. Recognizing this allows you to see that your partner is not your parent, and it gives you a chance to risk staying open and receiving the love that is being offered to you now, in the present. So how do we move from this awareness to practical change in our relationships? It begins with communication, but a different kind of communication, one that is systemically informed. Instead of saying, "You always do this," which is a statement of blame, you can try speaking from your own systemic experience. You could say, "When we have this argument, I feel a familiar sense of responsibility, like I have to fix everything, and I know this comes from my childhood. I need us to find a different way to handle this as equals." This approach invites your partner into a shared exploration of the dynamic rather than putting them on the defensive. It moves the focus from personal failing to a shared pattern that you can work on together. This path requires courage and a willingness to be vulnerable, to look at your own part in the dynamic without shame. It involves asking reflective questions, both of yourself and, when the time is right, with your partner. Questions like, "Who in my family does this pattern of conflict remind me of?" Or, "What loyalty might I be holding that prevents me from fully showing up as an adult in this partnership?" This isn't about psychoanalyzing each other, but about bringing a gentle, compassionate awareness to the bigger picture. By understanding the deep, often unconscious loyalties that drive our behaviors in relationships, we can slowly and respectfully untangle ourselves from them, freeing ourselves and our partners to create a connection based on present-day reality, choice, and a love that is truly our own. We will continue to build on these ideas as we move forward. See you in the next lesson. Welcome back. It's good to have you here as we continue our exploration. In our journey so far, we have explored the intricate web of relationships within our family system and how unconscious loyalties and entanglements can shape our personal lives. Now let's turn our attention to an area where these dynamics often play out in a very tangible and sometimes perplexing way: our professional lives. You might have wondered why, despite your best efforts, you struggle with success, or why money seems to slip through your fingers, or why you repeatedly experience burnout at work. From a systemic perspective, these professional challenges are rarely just about skills, market conditions, or personal ambition. Instead, our relationship with our career, our success, and the flow of money into our lives is frequently a direct reflection of our earliest and most fundamental relationships, our relationships with our parents and our place within our family of origin. It's a fascinating and often surprising connection to make, but one that holds immense power for transformation. Think about the fundamental act of receiving. To achieve success, to earn money, to build a fulfilling career, we must be able to take what life offers. Now consider your first experience of taking and receiving life itself. This came from your mother. Our relationship with our mother is the primary template for our ability to receive nourishment, support, and abundance. If for any reason our connection with her was interrupted or difficult, if we couldn't fully take her as she was, with all her strengths and imperfections, this pattern can unconsciously replicate itself in our professional life. We might find it difficult to take a promotion, to take a compliment, or to take the very money we have earned, feeling an inner resistance to receiving the fruits of our labor. The dynamic with our mother often sets the foundation for our success in our work itself, the very substance of what we do. It relates to the contentment and fulfillment we find in our daily tasks and projects. A healthy, respectful connection to our mother translates into an ability to engage with our work and our business with a sense of groundedness and flow. It's as if the life force that flowed from her to us continues to flow through us and into our creations. When this connection is strained, when we carry judgment or an unresolved longing, our work can feel like an unsatisfying struggle, always missing a key ingredient, much like a child who feels they never got what they needed from their mother, no matter what they do. Similarly, our relationship with our father plays a crucial and distinct role. If our mother represents the foundation and the substance of our success, our father represents the energy that propels us out into the world. He represents the structure, the direction, the strength, and the courage to take our place in society and to go for what we want. It is the paternal energy that supports us in moving beyond the family nest and carving out our own path in the wider world. A difficult or distant relationship with our father can manifest as a lack of confidence, an inability to set boundaries, a fear of stepping into the public eye, or a perpetual feeling of being unsupported as we try to make our mark. It can be like trying to build a house without a strong frame. The structure is weak and cannot stand firm against the pressures of the external world. Beyond the direct influence of our parents, wider systemic entanglements can create powerful hidden blocks to our professional success. Consider, for instance, an unconscious loyalty to an ancestor who experienced great hardship, perhaps living through war, famine, or bankruptcy. If they lost everything or lived their entire lives in poverty, a hidden part of you might feel that it would be a betrayal to surpass them. To be more successful or wealthier than they were could feel, on a deep soul level, like you are leaving them behind, breaking the fundamental law of belonging. You might unconsciously sabotage your own efforts to remain loyal to the family's culture of lack, creating a hidden ceiling on your own financial abundance. This isn't a conscious choice, but a powerful systemic pull. Another common pattern we've discussed, parentification, often leads directly to professional burnout. If as a child you had to take on adult responsibilities and care for your parents or siblings, you learned early on that your role was to carry heavy burdens. This pattern doesn't just disappear when you leave home, it becomes your default mode of operating in the world. At work, you become the one who takes on too much responsibility, who can't say no, who feels responsible for everyone else's success and well-being. This can lead to being a highly valued employee for a time, but it is ultimately unsustainable. You are replaying the childhood dynamic of carrying a load that was never meant to be yours, leading inevitably to exhaustion and overwhelm. So, how do we begin to untangle these threads and restore a healthy flow in our professional lives? The first step, as always in this work, is acknowledgement. It involves looking at our family history with open eyes and seeing the reality of what was. We can start by turning inward and respectfully acknowledging our parents, just as they are. A powerful inner movement is to imagine yourself standing before your mother and saying in your heart, "Dear Mom, you are my mother and I am your child. I take the life you gave me, all of it, at the full price you paid. I will do something good with it in your honor." This simple act of taking life from her can begin to heal the primary pattern of receiving, opening the door for you to also take success and abundance. Similarly, we can turn to our Father. We can imagine bowing to Him internally and saying something like, "Dear Dad, you are my Father and I am your child. Thank you for your part in my life. I take the strength you give me to go out into the world. Please look kindly on me as I find my own way." This gesture honors His place and allows you to consciously draw upon the paternal energy that supports your movement and your impact. It is not about condoning any difficult behavior, but about acknowledging the fundamental reality of your lineage. It is about separating the person from their role as your parent and taking the gift of life and strength that flowed through them to you. By performing these inner movements and adopting these healing attitudes, we begin to disentangle our professional struggles from our family history. We release ourselves from the unconscious loyalties that hold us back and free ourselves from replaying old childhood patterns in the workplace. Instead of being unconsciously bound by the fates of our ancestors, we can stand in our own place with their strength behind us. The potential blocks, such as a family legacy of poverty, can be transformed. We can look back with love and say, "You had your fate and I have mine. With respect for what you endured, I will create a different life." This turns the lineage from a source of limitation into a foundation of profound strength, allowing you to step into your professional power with the full backing of your system. I'll see you in the next lecture. Welcome back. Today we're going to explore a deeply personal and often mysterious aspect of our lives, our physical health, and how it connects to the hidden dynamics within our family systems. It's a profound idea, one that asks us to look beyond the purely biological or psychological explanations for our physical states. What if our bodies are in some way speaking a language that transcends our individual experience? From a systemic perspective, the body is seen as an incredibly sensitive instrument, a resonant chamber that picks up on the silent music of our family soul. The persistent aches, the chronic conditions, the inexplicable symptoms that defy straightforward medical diagnosis might not just be random occurrences or personal failings. They could be somatic expressions, physical manifestations of unresolved issues, loyalties, and entanglements that stretch back through generations. The body, in its wisdom, may be carrying a message for the entire system, a message that words have failed to articulate. One of the most common patterns we observe in constellation work is when a physical symptom represents a burden one is unconsciously carrying for another member of the family system. Imagine a person suffering from chronic, debilitating back pain. They have tried every treatment, seen specialists, and yet the pain persists. In a constellation, it might become clear that this individual is standing in for a grandparent who carried an immense unspoken burden, perhaps the grief of losing a child or the secret shame of a business failure. The descendants' back pain isn't theirs alone, it's a physical echo of their ancestors' emotional and spiritual load. By carrying the pain, the descendant is, out of a deep and unconscious love, attempting to say, I see your burden, I will help you carry it. The body becomes the stage upon which this hidden drama of loyalty is played out. Another fascinating and often quite startling phenomenon is the repetition of specific illnesses across generations. You might hear stories in your own family. Oh, all the women on my mother's side have terrible migraines. Or, the men in our family always develop heart problems in their 50s. While there can certainly be a genetic component to such patterns, the systemic perspective offers an additional layer of understanding. This repetition can signify a powerful identification with an ancestor. A person might develop the same rare condition as a great aunt they never even met. This isn't a conscious choice, but rather a deep systemic pull. The illness becomes a way of belonging, of saying, I am one of you, I remember you, I share your fate. The body in this case becomes a living memorial to the ancestor, keeping their story alive through the shared experience of suffering. We have previously discussed the dynamic of following someone in death, and this principle extends powerfully into the realm of health and illness. A pervasive state of ill health, a lack of vitality, or a series of inexplicable accidents can sometimes be a manifestation of this unconscious desire to follow a loved one who died young, tragically, or was never properly mourned. The message from the soul is, it is not right for me to be healthy and happy when you are not here. The body then complies with this systemic directive by refusing to fully embrace life and vitality. It's a form of loyalty that, on the surface, seems destructive, yet it springs from a profound, albeit misguided, love. By staying ill, the individual remains connected to the departed, refusing to leave them behind. At this point, it is absolutely crucial to state that this perspective is not a replacement for medicine. It does not suggest that you should abandon your doctors, treatments, or prescribed medications. Family constellations offer a complementary lens, an additional layer of inquiry that can work alongside and support conventional medical care. The goal is not to choose one over the other, but to integrate them. Understanding the systemic root of an issue does not negate the physical reality of the illness. Instead, it provides a different kind of information, opening up a new potential pathway for healing by addressing the soul's entanglement, which may in turn support the body's own healing processes. So how do we begin to work with this? The central question we ask when facing a physical symptom from a systemic viewpoint is, who or what is this symptom looking at? We shift our focus from trying to fix or eliminate the symptom to instead becoming curious about its message. Does this fatigue look at my mother, who was always exhausted raising her children alone? Does this skin condition look at an excluded ancestor, someone whose existence was a source of shame for the family? By asking these questions, we begin the process of untangling our personal physical experience from the larger systemic narrative it might be representing. We are, in effect, giving the symptom a voice and acknowledging the story it is trying to tell. When we bring these hidden dynamics to light, something remarkable can happen. The simple act of seeing the connection, of acknowledging the ancestor and their fate with respect, can initiate a profound shift. When a representative in a constellation bows to the ancestor and says, "I see your difficult fate and I honor it. You are you and I am me. I will leave your burden with you with love and respect," there is a release. The descendant is no longer unconsciously bound to carry what is not theirs. This release at the level of the soul can have a ripple effect on the physical body. It's as if the body can finally stand down from its post, relieved of its systemic job. The energy that was bound up in maintaining that loyalty is now freed up and can be redirected towards the individual's own life and healing. This process allows us to reclaim our own health and vitality as our own. It is about honoring the past without being chained to it. Honoring an ancestor does not mean we must repeat their suffering. True honor comes from living our own lives as fully as possible, enriched by their legacy, but free from their burdens. By untangling our health from these ancestral patterns, we are not only doing a service to ourselves, but also to the entire system. We break the chain of repetition, allowing future generations to be free from that particular dynamic. It is a powerful act of love for ourselves and for those who will come after us. I hope this has provided you with a new lens through which to view your own relationship with your body and your health. I'll see you in the next lecture. Welcome back. It's time to gather all the insights we've uncovered and turn our gaze toward the future. Throughout this journey, we have ventured deep into the unseen landscapes of our family systems. We have explored the fundamental principles, the orders of love that govern the flow of life and connection within our lineages. We have also brought to light the various entanglements that can unconsciously shape our lives, from identifying with ancestors to carrying burdens that are not our own. We have discovered the profound power of acknowledgement, of seeing what is, and have learned a new language of the soul through healing sentences and symbolic gestures like the bow. The purpose of this deep dive, however, has never been to remain submerged in the past. The true value lies in using this newfound clarity to navigate the present and consciously create our future. This brings us to the crucial final step, integration. The primary shift we are aiming for is a fundamental change in perspective, from seeing ourselves as unwitting victims of systemic forces to becoming conscious participants in our own lives. It's easy to look at the powerful dynamics we've uncovered and feel a sense of fatalism, as if our destiny were written long before we were born. But family constellation work, at its core, is an act of empowerment. It gives us the map and the key. By understanding the unconscious loyalties and patterns we've been bound by, we are for the first time in a position to make a different choice. This isn't about blaming our ancestors or our parents. It is about taking full, radical responsibility for our own happiness, our choices, and our reactions from this moment forward. It's an assertion that while our lineage has brought us to this point, we are the ones who steer the ship now. So how do we operationalize this? How do we translate the often emotional experience of a constellation into tangible, everyday action? The insights you've gained should function as an internal compass. When you face a significant life decision, whether in your career, your relationships, or your health, you now possess a new layer of data to consider. You can ask yourself, is this choice coming from me, from my own authentic desire, or is it a repetition of an old pattern? Am I trying to unconsciously fix something for my parents? Am I following someone out of a misplaced sense of loyalty? This systemic awareness allows you to pause before you act. In that pause, you can connect with the feeling of groundedness that comes from standing in your own rightful place, respecting what came before, but claiming your own life. Living with this systemic awareness means learning to notice the subtle pull of old dynamics as they arise in real time. You might find yourself in an argument with your partner and suddenly recognize the pattern of the interrupted reaching out movement playing out. Perhaps you feel an inexplicable block in your career and sense an old entanglement with an ancestor's failed business venture. In these moments, you don't need to set up a full constellation. You can simply bring the principles to mind. You can inwardly acknowledge the ancestor. You can silently say a healing sentence. You can consciously choose to respond differently rather than react instinctively. Instead of pulling away from your partner, you can choose to take a breath and say, I want to connect with you. This is the practice of conscious living. It is crucial to understand that this healing and integration is not a one-time event. You don't have a constellation, receive an insight, and then live happily ever after, free from all systemic influence. Life doesn't work that way. Instead, think of it as an ongoing process of growth and refinement. It's like learning a new language. At first, it's clumsy and requires great effort, but with consistent practice, it becomes more natural, more integrated into your being. There will be days when you fall back into old patterns, when you react from a place of entanglement. The goal is not perfection, the goal is awareness. When you notice you've slipped, you can simply acknowledge it without judgment and gently guide yourself back to a place of conscious choice. This process empowers you to build a life that is a true and authentic expression of your own potential, not merely an echo of your family's past. By honoring your lineage, you are not bound to repeat it. On the contrary, by giving everyone and everything its rightful place, you become free. You take the love and the strength from your ancestral line, you leave the burdens and the pain where they belong, and you step forward with gratitude and responsibility. This is the toolkit you now possess, a set of inner attitudes and perspectives. It's the ability to see with systemic eyes, to feel with an open heart, and to act with a conscious will. Your life becomes your own masterpiece, informed by the past, but not dictated by it. This is the ultimate gift of this work, the movement from unconscious fate to conscious destiny. I'll see you in the final video to wrap things up. Well, here we are at the end of our time together in this course. We have reached the end of our formal lessons, but as you might already sense, the real journey of integrating these profound insights is only just beginning. In this concluding session, I want to take a moment with you to reflect on the path we have traveled together. We started by laying the groundwork, exploring the very nature of a family as a system, a living, breathing entity with its own consciousness and memory. We delved into the mysterious and powerful concept of the knowing field, that informational space from which representatives in a constellation can access feelings and truths that are not their own, yet which belong deeply to the system being explored. From there, we established the crucial role of the facilitator and the importance of setting a clear, heartfelt intention, which acts as a guiding star for the entire constellation process. We even touched upon the different ways this work can be done, from group sessions with human representatives to individual work with figures or in our own imagination, showing its incredible flexibility and accessibility. From those foundational concepts, we moved into the very heart of Bert Hellinger's work, the Orders of Love. These are not rules to be rigidly followed, but rather observations of the natural laws that govern the flow of love and life within family systems. We explored the first order, the fundamental right of every member to belong, and the profound consequences when someone is excluded, forgotten, or shamed. Then we examined the second order, the delicate and essential balance of giving and taking, understanding how imbalances in this exchange can create deep-seated resentments and blockages in relationships, not just between partners, but across generations. Finally, we looked at the third order, the principle of precedence and time, acknowledging that those who came before us have priority and must be honored in their place for us to fully receive the flow of life from them. Integrating these orders into our daily awareness is a lifelong practice, one that can bring a surprising amount of peace and clarity to our interactions. With this framework in place, we then had the courage to look at the more difficult aspects of systemic life, the common entanglements that can keep us stuck in patterns that don't belong to us. We saw how a person might unconsciously identify with a previous ancestor, living out their unresolved fate or unfulfilled dreams without even knowing it. We witnessed the tragic loyalty of a child who, out of a blind and deep love, decides to follow a parent or sibling into illness or even death, saying in their soul, "I will go with you," or "I will go instead of you." We brought to light the dynamic of parentification, where a child, out of necessity or a distorted sense of responsibility, takes on the role of a parent to their own mother or father, a burden that robs them of their childhood and creates disorder in the system. And we explored the deep wound of the interrupted reaching out movement, that primal moment when a child's reach for a parent was not met, creating a lifelong pattern of difficulty with intimacy and receiving love. But we didn't just stay in the darkness of these entanglements, we illuminated the path toward resolution through the power of healing movements. The journey toward healing, as we discovered, often begins with the simple yet profound act of acknowledgement, of seeing what is, without judgment or the desire to change it. We learned about the potency of healing sentences, those simple, distilled statements of truth like, "I see you," or "I take my life from you at the full price it cost you," which can land in the soul and shift long-held dynamics in an instant. We explored the physical act of bowing as a powerful gesture of humility and respect that can restore order, allowing a child to once again stand as the small one before the big ones, their parents, and receive the flow of life. And crucially, we looked at the process of reintegrating the excluded, of creating a space in our hearts and in the family memory for those who were cast out, which in turn frees the living from carrying their fate. Through this entire process, you have gained an entirely new lens, a new way of seeing yourself, your family, and the intricate, often invisible web of relationships that have shaped your life. It's important to remember that this work is not primarily an intellectual exercise, though understanding the concepts is a helpful start. At its core, it is an invitation to a deeper, more embodied connection with your own heart, your lineage, and your roots. The insights you've gathered here, the shifts you may have felt, will not be a one-time event. They will continue to unfold within you over days, weeks, months, and even years, revealing new layers of meaning and understanding as you continue on your life's path. Be patient and deeply compassionate with yourself and with the members of your family as you integrate this new and sometimes unsettling awareness. As you move forward from this course, I invite you to carry the key principles we've discussed not as a heavy burden of rules, but as gentle reminders in the back of your mind. Remember to honor everyone's rightful place in the system, especially your own. Pay gentle attention to the balance of giving and taking in your most important relationships, noticing where the flow feels generous and where it feels stuck. Acknowledge and respect the order of time, honoring those who came before you, as this is the very foundation upon which your own life stands. May this knowledge, this new way of seeing, serve you as a source of strength when you feel weak, clarity when you feel confused, and deep, abiding compassion for yourself and for all others as you continue on your unique and precious life path. Thank you for sharing this profound journey with me. I wish you all the very best on your path forward.